This is the destruction of Canada, what's going on right now. Look behind me. This is the end of it. The end of our sovereignty is what's happening.
How do you feel about the protest?
I love that these people showed up, and I fear that things are going to get out of hand. Look at these guys. This is out of control. When did our police turn into these guys?
Is this too much police for a protest like this?
This is the militarization of our police, and here's proof right here. This is the death of Canada, which is happening right now. Our sovereignty is in trouble.
What happened in Montebello was the people in 2007, in August, in Montebello, Quebec, were fed up with this 2.5-year-old trade deal going forward and merging every aspect of their society and harmonizing the regulations to the lowest possible standards according to what corporations want. They were sick and tired of the information not being given out to the public, not being openly shared, and of not being given any input into what was happening with respect to this massive trade deal. So they massed in Montebello what looked to be about 1,000, 1,500 protesters. There was a security perimeter around the meeting, and there was incredible police presence there. And at one point, the police were even caught infiltrating the protest by 3 giant, muscle-bound, supposedly anarchists, wearing masks and holding rocks, were threatening to throw the rocks at the police.
No! Put the rock down, man!
A union leader stepped up and said, "Take off your masks, put down those rocks, you're not with us."
You're a fucking cop, the 3 of you! Go on, it's our line! These 3 guys are cops, everybody!
Eventually, they ripped the masks off the guys, and the guys dove behind the police line. And that was all. It was caught on tape. It was exposed. They were exposed as infiltrators because they were wearing the same boots as the officers who arrested them. Plus, of course, you know, who dives behind a police line for protection if you're a protester? It's something that most protesters would be scared to do, to dive into a bunch of police who are there, you know, menacingly, you know, staring at them.
As we confirmed yesterday, the 3 people in question were indeed Sûreté du Québec police officers performing their duties.
And what that shows is the fascist lengths which the Canadian government will go to protect the information about this trade deal.
For over 50 years, the Bilderberg Group constructed the European Union by stealth under the guise of trade deals. Now the elite are using the same secretive program to complete the North American Union. But this time, superstate integration is on the extreme fast track. International agreements like NAFTA, GATT, and APEC were just stepping stones in the formation of the NAU. The North American Union was officially born at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, on March 23, 2005. The leaders of the United States, Mexico, and Canada told the press that they were only meeting to discuss trade. It soon leaked that a secret meeting had been held during the Security and Prosperity Trilateral Summit. The 3 governments had refused to release the secret agreement to the people. In September of 2006, their treasonous operation was blown wide open. From September 12th to September 14th, in Banff, Canada, hundreds of elected and appointed government leaders from Canada, Mexico, and the United States met in secret. On the last day of the conference, someone inside the secret North American Union Forum leaked the agenda. The front pages of newspapers across Canada carried the story. The Judicial Watch Foundation submitted Freedom of Information Act requests to obtain the full agenda and minutes of the secret assembly. Many federal agencies refused, citing national security. The foundation finally succeeded and did receive thousands of pages of documents. The documents marked unclassified are the blueprints of a shadow government ruling by bureaucratic and executive fiat. The pages chronicle an already operating North American Union. Transportation, law enforcement, agriculture, regulation, banking, manufacturing, construction, education, immigration, and even the military are being merged with no input from the people or their elected representatives in Congress and Parliament. One of the first items on their agenda was to stress how important it was that their plan, quote, be carried out by stealth. The controllers also talked about exploiting the public's fears of climate change to push a continent-wide tax to fund the new government. Globalist tool Robert Pastor is incessantly paraded on the world stage as the man behind the North American merger. When he testified before Congress, he pushed the idea of a continental security perimeter that erases national boundaries and merges the security apparatus.
The best way to secure the United States today is not at our two borders with Mexico and Canada, but at the borders of North America as a whole.
In fact, the North American Command, based in Colorado Springs, Colorado, was clearly running the meeting in Canada. For the past decade, the Pentagon has been training with Mexican and Canadian forces and has openly discussed using them inside the United States for disasters and to quell domestic unrest. There are already over 100,000 non-U.S. citizens serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. The Pentagon is now expanding its recruiting centers in Mexico, the Philippines, and Eastern Europe. Big city police departments nationwide are lobbying to change laws so they can recruit non-citizens to join the police force. What we are witnessing is a Red Dawn scenario in slow motion. Tyrants throughout history have brought in foreigners to oppress their domestic populations. When their coup by stealth was exposed, the three governments went into damage control mode. The Security and Prosperity Partnership quickly staged a show summit that was held in Ottawa, Canada in February of 2007.
It is the only way that we can achieve security and prosperity for our people is through this cooperation. We actually occupy one physical space, the North America. We've also had a chance as foreign ministers to talk about how we cooperate in the region and indeed in the world.
Protesters who were upset about losing their countries and freedoms were not tolerated.
A couple of weeks ago, an Al-Qaeda supposed.
Whatsoever, the Security and Prosperity Partnership has been signed without any sort of parliamentary debate.
Globalist publications have been open with their frustration that the population has not bought their latest PR stunt. As integration inside the European and American unions accelerates, the superstates themselves are being merged. On April 30th, 2007, a summit was held at the White House. The Security and Prosperity Partnership's secretive approach had alarmed the public. So this time, President Bush, German Chancellor Merkel, and EU Commission President Barroso hid their treachery in plain sight.
Thank the Chancellor and Josie very much for the transatlantic economic integration plan.
And for that too, we need to develop a common market, common standards.
So this is indeed a very important agreement, and an agreement that also brings with it a Transatlantic Economic Council to be a permanent body with senior people on both sides of the Atlantic that will look at all those issues in a concrete manner, in which way we can make it move forward.
The BBC reported that the US and EU had agreed on a single market. By announcing a new economic community integration, they were simply repeating what had been done in America and the EU on a larger scale. The accord states that the two blocs will aggressively push regulatory convergence in more than 35 areas, from financial services, intellectual property, military, education, mergers and acquisitions. They also agreed to jointly push a global carbon tax.
We recognize that we have a problem with greenhouse gases.
We agree there is a global threat, it's a serious threat. We agree there is the need to establish a limit to greenhouse gases.
We need to discuss the possible pricing of CO2. How can we translate this into a market economic compatible scheme?
We have agreed to establish a high-level group, a forum.
This EU-US result is translated into the G8, debated together with the outreach countries, China, South Africa, Brazil, among others, and India.
A global solution to a global problem.
If Bilderberg succeeds, America falls. All the victimized countries lose their sovereignty.
Bilderberg is not a person, it's not an idea, it's an ideal, a very powerful group of people working together and from the positions of ultimate and absolute power, destroying every constitution on earth, no matter how powerful the constitution of the nation is. That's what these people do.
The African Union arose out of the African Economic Community, set up in the early 1980s. The African Union is financed by a consortium of international bodies, governments, and corporations. The African Union Army serves as an enforcement arm for the New World Order's exploitation of Africa. In Asia, APEC and ASEAN have announced plans to form the Asian Union, consisting of Asian and Pacific nations, having more than 3 billion people within its borders.
APEC will become the Asian Pacific Union, and the world is to be divided into 3 great regions for the administrative convenience of the world government in which the UN is to evolve.
As the unions form individually, they are simultaneously merged to form the first planetary government.
They're trying to destroy every nation on earth which is trying to promote progress, because these people basically they are landowners. They don't need progress because they control the land. If you take the most powerful man in London, the people who belong to the Council and the Committee of 300, who belong to the Bilderbergers, the British royalty, the Guelphs, the black nobility of Venice and Genoa, these people they're landowners. The New World Order is the Old World Order. I mean, it's just the names have changed, the appearances have changed, but the concept hasn't changed. The idea is still to bring the men back, kicking and screaming back to the Middle Ages, post-industrial age world order.
The architects of the New World Order are in a race to complete the structure of world government so they can suppress the independent development of technologies that threaten their monopoly of power, while at the same time steering new developments in the direction the architects chart for humanity. The technocrats call their governing system the final revolution because in the past, empires were enforced militarily. Now enforcement is primarily psychological and economic, and society itself is a construct of the elite who operate outside the controlled paradigm and control the civilization within, just as a child maintains the environment of a fish tank. We are like lab rats, living out our entire existence, never questioning the confines of the cage or the scientists who experiment on us. New World Order engineers have hijacked human destiny. Its controllers have closely studied human behavior for more than 100 years and are now steering us with expert control, using our primitive drives and desires as levers. They have developed their mind control systems to the point of being able to control the average unconscious person like a car. Eugenics dominated the 20th century. Its ruthless spirit has now metastasized into the fields of genetics, nanotech, and robotics. But that's not surprising. From their inception, all 3 disciplines have been dominated by eugenicists. The billionaire founder of Sun Microsystems, Bill Joy, courageously went public in 2000 to warn of a cancerous consensus among the technocratic elite that at best humanity would be completely enslaved by the year 2030, and at worst, mass extermination of everyone but the elite would take place.
Welcome to the pioneering new world of farming pharmaceuticals. Biofarming, aiding scientists in cutting-edge research.
PPL Therapeutics is working on a solution. They want to clone pigs whose organs can be transplanted into people.
Cloned and genetically modified cows that can produce milk containing the same health properties as human breast milk.
These glow-in-the-dark cats could help develop treatments for diseases, for animals, and for humans.
Yes, you did hear that correctly. He has put a spider gene into a goat.
Transgenic fish. So the fish actually have what appear to be six-pack abs that we see in humans.
My friends, I am here to warn you. I am here to alert you to the greatest threat to our species and our civilization on this planet. Humanity in just the last 100 years has increased its technological and scientific knowledge thousands and thousands of times what it was. But we are still the same species that we were, capable of magnificent heights, but also of horrifying lows. I want to talk to you about the greatest threat to human civilization and society today, already irrevocably changing the genetic code of the biospheres on this planet, and that is genetic engineering. Now, I love science and technology. I know that it's a neutral thing and that man can use it for good or bad. But that said, the controllers and engineers of our society for more than 100 years have believed that if they can discover the secrets of life, DNA, that they will have the keys to immortality. And now you see all the different news articles where they openly brag about this, and the elite says, we don't need a giant population anymore to run our technological systems. We're now phasing into robotics, where the military's aircraft will be drone, where combat robots will do the fighting, where manufacturing will be carried on and executed by non-biological systems. So there is an arms race going on and a technological race going on right now dealing with genetic engineering. And recently, the FDA has put into effect new policies that allow genetic engineering companies, predominantly big agri, to put on the market any GMO organism they wish without even consulting the public. Now, when you look at this, it's not just GMO grass that takes less water. It's not just GMO tomatoes that last longer on the shelf. Every genetic engineer I've talked to who worked at these large companies said that in the different studies of GMO potatoes, rice, you name it, that there would be the side effect of reducing fertility in the rodents, the rats, the mice, the guinea pigs that they tested it on.
Those that ate the genetically engineered soy, they didn't actually show the problems in the first generation. The second generation was slower growth, slower onset for maturity, but by the third generation, that's when nearly all of the adults had lost the ability to have babies.
And then later in primate studies with monkeys and apes, the same thing happened. And that along with the public trait that these organisms are being engineered for, there are other traits quietly being built in as a Trojan horse that cause biological changes in the body, that increase cancer, that reduce fertility. And these developments are a lot further along than the public has even been told. The information is available, but it's not an issue that gets a lot of media play. And even when I have the news articles and cover them on air, I get emails and phone calls saying I'm a liar. I'll never forget years ago covering news articles about spider goats, part spider, part goat, to produce body armor in their udders, in their mammary glands, that can then be used as an industrial product, a special component. This is the very life force of the planet, the very building blocks of the planet being scrambled together. And people would call me and couldn't believe it. Even today, I see news articles about spider goats and salmon that are been mixed with other insects and fish that will, within 40 generations, extinct the natural salmon that are in the ocean, according to university studies. And people just seem to not care. We are being fed this stuff. GMO crops have been infecting other crops, but also other plants that are growing naturally and haven't been developed through hybridization. When there's a nuclear disaster, it increases cancer, it causes a lot of illnesses, but it tends to dissipate over time. But with genetically engineered and altered organisms, it doesn't go away. It mixes with other species. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. What is the greatest threat to our species? It is unchecked, out of control, genetic engineering being carried out by thousands of companies in tens of thousands of laboratories across the world. I remember 7 or 8 years ago seeing in the Washington Post just a footnote in an article in their science section where they admitted that in Costa Rica, there is widespread human-animal clones being made. And yes, my friends, you heard me right. In fact, if you go back to the BBC News articles from more than a decade ago, they admitted that they weren't just cloning humans, that they were splicing them, in one case, with cow genetics, bovine genetics, so that the cow would not reject the human fetus growing inside of its uterus. Now, why are they doing this? They are growing the fetuses up to close to term, reportedly, and this is what we know about, so that their organs can be harvested. You have your clone produced with cow genetics in it so that your clone can be grown in a cow nearing the time that you need the liver transplant or kidney transplant or blood transfusions, whatever the case is, and then your clone is harvested from the womb of the cow or the artificial wombs that they've been developing and harvested so that you can have an extended life. And the issue here is we need to have a debate about this. People see this as science fiction because in movies back in the 50s and 60s and 70s or in The Island of Dr. Moreau, this was written about many decades before that. And so people have been preconditioned that this is fantasy and that this doesn't exist. This is very real. And I thought that I would raise this issue again because over the weekend I saw in the news of Australia, human-animal hybrids created amid Frankenstein warnings. Scientists in the UK have reportedly created more than 150 human-animal hybrid embryos in controversial, secretive lab experiments that spread over 3 years. And there's another report here out of the Daily Mail who also reported on this issue. A lot of things concern me and hopefully concern you with all of this, but one issue is the media. Every time I've seen this reported in the last 15 years, it's always the first time it's being reported, and they always say it's been going on for 3 to 5 years. Well, the first time I saw this confirmed, that human clones had been created but terminated before term, before they were born, was in the BBC, 95, 96. You can pull it up. I saw it again in 97, 98, 99. I've seen it in scientific publications. And in China, they have totally embraced this system. They're not only creating human animal clones that resemble humans, they've also created cows that are part human and create human breast milk in their udders. In the last 100 years, governments began working on bioweapons. The Imperial Japanese, the Germans, England, the United States, France, many other governments. And they always centered in and around race-specific bioweapons that would wipe out a certain, quote, race of people, whether it was blacks, Arabs, Jews. Governments have worked on them all. The problem in this research is they find that humans are so interconnected and share our genetics across the board that this is unfeasible until now. Now, the number one danger here is that governments, when they began to work on bioweapons, first tried to take zoological bioweapons like Ebola that affected apes and monkeys and cross it over to humans. And there's evidence that that's what's happened with Ebola. Now governments, in the name of defense, are working on airborne Ebola that will kill 99% of us that it comes in contact with. Then you discover that the ruling elite are obsessed with world government being a mechanism to carry out the orderly extermination of the global population. We cover that in my seminal film, Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, free here on the web at YouTube. At least for now, we're being censored more and more. Please get that film, get out to everyone you know. So you've got insects, animal genes, reptile genes being engineered into fish and being released to open water. You've got human cross-species clones growing inside of cows so they can harvest the organs. Ladies and gentlemen, they talk about animal rights. What about human rights? They're mixing plant and animal with human. And this will allow cross-species diseases to spread easier into populations. It will give rise to mutant viruses and other mutagenic microorganisms that could create plagues, the likes of which this earth has never seen. And there are thousands of different laboratories across the world working on these systems. We're already seeing clear evidence that genetically engineered crops are what's causing all of these incredible allergies. It's what's destroying our immune systems. More and more governments are moving to not even let the public know when they're eating GMO food. They're coming out with cloned beef, cloned chicken, cloned fish, but not just cloned, cross-species. When you read the industry publications of these biotech companies bragging about the part human, part animal creatures they're creating, they say that it was essential from the beginning that they do this so that the clones not have rights. When they mix chimpanzee with a human embryo and play God, they then claim that these poor creatures they've created have no rights. And listen to me carefully here. If this has been going on for 15 years and is now only being introduced to the public, can you imagine what's been going on in secret in government laboratories and private corporate laboratories across the planet? That's why the global engineers are so arrogant. They have been playing God for a long time. They are taking the successes from their research and shelving it under national security for themselves. If humanity survives, when the history of this time is written, our progeny will marvel that we ever survived. And they will marvel at the unmitigated recklessness of the ruling class and what they're doing. The rates of cancers and diabetes have doubled in the last decade. We are being tested upon. This is such a nightmare by these psychopathic technocrats. The same government and corporate institutions that are caught worldwide giving children live polio and syphilis shots. The same people caught funding forced abortions in China. They are engaged in this mad testing in a race for the fountain of youth while they endanger the entire species and the planet in the process. This is the threat, not fake terrorism, not mass shootings, not all of these diversions that they use to sell us on having government take over our lives. The threat is this globalist banking cartel in control of the scientific method and almost all research funds on the planet playing God. This makes nuclear weapons look like child's play. And the psychopathic ruling class is selling all of this as inevitable. You will be assimilated by the Borg, basically. That transhumanism set up by the eugenicist Aldous Huxley is the way to go, and that they're just going to do this and it doesn't matter. They have thrown it in our face, and we're not even having a debate or a discussion about it. We are being poisoned and manipulated through the food and the water. It is admitted. We are under attack. There is a revolution against free humanity through the eugenicist mindset of the globalist. We are under chemical and biological attack. The scientific dictatorship sought to not only overthrow nation states, but to destroy the family and the human species itself. All of us are under attack. The global technocrats launch their assaults through covert means, through our water and food supplies, as well as household items, food packaging, prescription and over-the-counter drugs. All of these systems used to deliver their covert Trojan horse payloads of control. If we are unsuccessful in stopping these technocratic madmen, humanity as we know it is a thing of the past. The report that you are about to see documents this horrific fact in detail. What you do with the information is up to you. You have been warned. The information that you are about to see and hear is some of the most important info that you will ever witness in your life. I can say that unequivocally. And I am begging you, for the sake of you and your family and for our human family, to please take notes, to check the different documents and news articles that we're going to show you here today, and prove to yourself that we're telling you the truth. In fact, we're only scratching the surface. There is a private global corporate government now operating in the open that is based on the quack science of eugenics. And to put that in a pop culture context, or something the general public will understand, Hitler was a eugenicist. And he got his ideas from scientists in England and the United States. Now, the robber barons like the Rockefellers that funded Hitler early on in the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute still control this nation and much of the world today. And the entire development of modern sciences through large tax-free foundations and government funding and DARPA that President Eisenhower warned us about has been in the direction of basically creating an artificial habitat, an artificial system where the scientific dictators, or the technocrats as they call themselves, play God over us and manipulate us. They see us as lab rats, as guinea pigs. Now, in the last decade, I've talked a lot about eugenics, really for more than 16 years on air, but intensely for 10 years or more. And in the different documents that we're going to show you here, we found the UN documents, the Planned Parenthood documents, the World Population Organization documents, where they openly discussed breaking up the family, getting rid of the, quote, arcane institution so they could have their international collectivist system, shutting down all competition against the ultra-rich. That is the system that we face as a society. And I'm going to go over some of those documents. But up front, I want to just say this. The system is scared to death of this information. 3 years ago, they had a bunch of different George Soros-affiliated and Democratic Party-affiliated groups come out against me and really simplify the straw man that they'd built and go after me by saying, Alex Jones says the government is putting chemicals in your food and water to make you gay. What I had actually said was, bisphenol A alone, that's in thousands of plastic products, printer ink, you name it, is lowering male fertility, is a estrogen mimicker, and is feminizing boys and men and hyper-feminizing women, and has been linked in major studies to breast cancer and other cancers. It is devastating our society. And these hormonal disruptors are actually running off into the lakes, streams, and rivers and confusing the sexual reproduction of nutria rats, rodents, fish, turtles, you name it. This is a toxic waste, and it is added to our water. It is added to our food. It is added through the plastics that are in almost everything to our daily lives to reduce our fertility. Now, I want to show you first this document. This is from Planned Parenthood to the president of the Population Council that was tied in with the United Nations. And in it, they break down in 1969 plans to lower population and destroy the family. A, postpone or avoid marriage. B, alter image of ideal family size. Demonize having more than one child. Compulsory education of children. They mean brainwashing. Now listen to this one. Encourage increased homosexuality. Here's another one. Educate for family limitation. Fertility control agents in water supply. And the current White House science czar, John P. Holdren, is on record in multiple books calling for this as well. And I got news for you. It's going on now. You are being forcibly drugged with toxic chemicals. Hundreds of them are added to the water supply, including radioactive isotopes, not just sodium fluoride that gives you a 7-fold increase in cancer. They have gone absolutely ape over the fact that I'm talking about this, because it hits at the core of how these scientists are playing God, okay? This is not saying that people in the Roman times, some of them weren't gay or whatever. This is not about a moral issue. This is about to reduce population, giving men estrogen mimickers so that they're not attracted to women and so they are less fertile or infertile. But on the other side, it's making girls go into puberty at 9, 10 years old. Many of them now at 5. I've seen some articles as young as 3. This is all over the Western world. The United States has the highest cancer rates, especially in women and breast cancer. It basically accelerates the aging process to simplify it. It does a bunch of other horrible things as well. It causes deformities in utero, causes more abortions, women to have miscarriages, and that's what this document gets into. It says compulsory abortion for out-of-wedlock pregnancies, compulsory sterilization of all who have had 2 children. What do you see in China? Our government went over there in the 70s, made a deal with the U.S. government and the UN to industrialize China and finance them if they do this. And now I see articles where they have forced abortions, where they're arresting people or taking their property if they have more children than the state says they can have. China is the model of the world. Break out of this matrix. Realize that you live in a controlled society and an artificially constructed civilization that is designed to dehumanize you and strip you of what it is to be a human, taking over our very reproductive process, chemically altering men and women at an early age and even in utero. And what happens when I point this out? How does the establishment, the mainstream media, these corporate dinosaur mercenaries of propaganda, these prostitutes, how do they respond? Same way they've done for years. Last week, there were articles in CBS News, ABC News, you name it, attacking myself and Ron Paul, saying Ron Paul goes on Alex Jones's show, and Alex Jones says the government's putting chemicals in your food and water to make you gay. You see, they know people are reading that, and so they take all this research and they just turn it into, Alex says they want to make you gay, and look, Ron Paul goes on their show. When what I've really shown here is this is being done to reduce fertility, to increase cancer, and to destroy our normal gender roles. You're taking people's choices to have children away. You're taking people's choices to choose their sexual preference away. You know, they spin it and say you're born this way, and certainly there's different variants of it. Some of it is natural, but they're artificially adding chemicals that are making rats be confused about their gender, male and female. You're being chemically altered. Here are the documents. Here's the White House science czar calling for adding stuff to the water, and their answer is, oh, Alex doesn't like gay people. That has nothing to do with this. This is about science and being manipulated by a technocracy that's playing God. The Centers for Disease Control has come out after public pressure and after scientific pressure and admitted that what's in the printer ink and the receipt ink and on the money and in thousands of products, TV dinners, you name it, toilet paper, that people are touching is an estrogen mimicker and was chosen out of thousands of different varieties to be a chemical in the environment to reduce fertility and to basically turn men into servile creatures. The globalists just want to subdue the population so they can engage in chemical and biological warfare against us. Our water, our food, it's all being manipulated. And it's admitted now that the majority of water supplies in the U.S. have high levels of Prozac, high levels of female hormones, high levels of hundreds and hundreds of other chemicals that are, quote, runoff. The problem is I've seen the major studies. In some cases, this stuff is 200, 300, 400 times higher than it could be from sewage runoff. It's being added to the water. There's a reason the American people and the people of Western Europe will put up with such incredible tyranny. It's because we've been chemically and biologically manipulated. And you find out what it's doing to people. It is mind-boggling. This is a holocaust that's going on. This is an attack on the human species itself, so these eugenicists can bring in their world government. Look at this headline. Bisphenol A now linked to male infertility and gender confusion. Here's another one. Sperm counts continue to plummet, say researchers connected to bisphenol A. Greenpeace finds toxic chemicals in branded clothing. Canned food may expose people to BPA, the little juice box liners. Canada declares BPA toxic, sets stage for more bans. FDA faulted for stance on chemicals in plastics. Here's the good news. A decade ago, when you talked about bisphenol A and other issues similar to it, you were laughed at. That isn't happening now. The Canadian government, different European governments have moved in the last 4 years to have it removed by law. Here in the United States, retailers have come out and advertised that they're bisphenol A free, but the establishment and the eugenicists have struck back. They're now having it added to literally thousands of different products, as I mentioned earlier, even toilet paper, so that it's incredibly hard to avoid this stuff. These nasty little globalist control freaks count on you being lazy, count on you being trusting. They count on you not researching and finding out the full horror of what they're involved in. This is a total takeover of the biosphere of our planet, just like Monsanto's coming out with seeds, the Terminator seeds that don't reproduce. You've got to go to them each time. There's a new report out, International Journal of Biomedical Sciences, very prestigious. Monsanto GMO corn linked to organ failure. When you read deeper in the study, it's causing massive infertility in all mammal species, and within 3 generations, near total infertility in guinea pigs, rats. There are no human studies. Do you understand? We're already a generation and a half or so into this, and we see fertility plummeting. Within 3 generations in all mammal species they tested in, 99% infertility and incredible deformities. And now, because there's such incredible infertility, the globalists are coming out with the infertility treatments, which they sell at incredible cost to the public. They add things to the water, add things to the food, add things to the packaging chain by design through these global combines, through these agreements, and then when you're sterile, they come back and for millions of dollars, you go to them for these expensive genetic treatments so you can have children, but they're now designer. And the companies can build whatever Trojan horses they want into the back end. And then they will have the high-tech treatments that are able to unlock our genetic code and allow us to reproduce again. Once the world government's in place and all their own UN and Club of Rome documents, they're talking about an 80% world population reduction. That's what their world government is about. That's why the big mega banks that run this system want to destroy the world economy so that everybody is dependent on government. They don't want you to be self-sufficient. They want you to be dumbed down and controlled. But if you're aware of the chemical and biological cocktails that are assaulting you, we can fight our way out of this by making choices that limit the amount of exposure we have to this form of warfare. There's a reason all these diseases are increasing, because we are being slow killed. We are being soft killed. We are being murdered by a cocktail of poisons. This is the ultimate revolution. This is the human revolution against a technocratic, psychopathic, control freak elite who are playing God. Warn everyone you know about bisphenol A. It's in almost everything. Clothes, printer ink, packaging, it's everywhere. And retail workers and factory workers that are around this are being devastated by it. Let's reclaim our humanity together. Don't let them use little cliches about, oh, we're bashing gay people, or oh, we're conspiracy theorists. When these criminals attack us with propaganda, we need to shove the facts right back in their face and say, we see you, we know what you're doing, we've got the facts, and we're not laying down and taking it anymore. Humanity is awakening to the crimes that you, the eugenicists, have been committing against us, and you will be brought to justice. Now, the rest is up to you. Get this information out to everyone you know. The ball is in your court. The information you've seen is only a tiny fraction of the accumulated research that Infowars.com has amassed. It's now up to you to do your own research, to fully awaken, and then begin the task of awakening others. Our species is strong, and we can defeat this tiny group of psychopaths attempting to set themselves up as God.
On the outskirts of the national capital today, black limousines with darkened windows converged on a hotel where private security guards imposed ironclad control. The limos carried royalty, political power brokers, and industrial titans to a secret meeting that will last all weekend. It's known as the Bilderberg Group. Could their objective be world domination?
Every 4 years, Bilderberg meets in North America, and in June of 2006, we decided to travel to Ottawa, the capital of Canada. the site of Bilderberg.
Remain seated until the captain has turned off the fasten seatbelt sign.
In Bilderberg's long history, many reporters attempting to cover the group have been harassed, detained, and even jailed. I jokingly reassured my cameramen that the horror stories we'd read about were probably exaggerated. I was wrong.
We know reporters get detained at airports, people aren't let in. We know people get sent to the jailhouse for 3 or 4 hours. It happens every time. Well, it happened to Alex Jones this time. They admitted Bilderberg that they've had pressure put on them by the government to heighten security, and that's why all this happened. Yes, I was told that by 2 separate people. They scoured our records for hours yesterday and hours today, trying to find something on us, and of course there was nothing. It was just scary. I mean, I've been all over the world, and I've never seen anything like this. It was like hours of humiliation. And they said, "What are you here for?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to, cover the media, covering a political event. I hope to talk to some members of Parliament." I was answering all the questions. It was clear I wasn't a threat. It was clear I didn't have any criminal record. It was clear I was pressed. It was clear I was coming to interview people. They were going to deny me. They told me earlier that I was probably going to be denied, and then you guys showed up, and everything changed.
So what's your plan now?
My plan is to go out and try to interview Jim Tucker, to try to go down to the Bilderberg group and maybe catch some of them still arriving, and try to still make a documentary. So instead of being here at 8 a.m. in the morning when the Bilderberg group attendees, the 100 elite of the planet, start showing up, we're going to be getting here about 3:30 or so, and we'll see if we can catch any of the elites coming in.
What do you think is on the agenda for this edition of the Bilderberg Society's annual meeting?
They're debating the attack on Iran. They're talking about how to take out Hugo Chavez. They're talking about how to get their American Union in that destroys Canadian, U.S., and Mexican sovereignty. So we're talking about the death of Canada is what's happening in there right now. The death of your sovereignty is happening in there right now. CNN has even reported that these individuals have put out the policy reports through the Council on Foreign Relations that writes their scholarly white papers to end the United States, to end Canada, and to end Mexico.
About 10 have come in. They've been coming in slowly in typically big black cars with what appears to be bulletproof glass, and we've got a few pictures of some of the people. We're being kept well back from the building by an awful lot of security people, but there'll be more security as this thing develops.
Again, just a reminder to stay off the property, okay?
I am. This is the line. We checked with the city.
Thank you. How you doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
First Boston. That's the ex-president of Ireland? Maybe? Okay. Danny will know.
I came here from upstate New York. I booked a room way in advance. When I checked in at 10 o'clock at night, they told me I had to be out at 8:30 in the morning. And so, of course, I complied to what they wanted. I wasn't happy about it because I had been tired. I drove quite a long way. Then I went down to have something to eat, and I just saw a bunch of security here, and I was wondering what was going on, and I asked questions, and they said they were having a wedding or they were having some sort of reception. So I decided to ask a couple more questions because I thought it was kind of weird. And then I saw them from my hotel window. They were in the back with flashlights looking at the trees, looking up through the trees, and they were also in front of the hotel combing. It looked like combing the hotel. So I kind of was wondering what was going on, and I left. I got up this morning, I checked out, and then the fellow that I spoke with, the last fellow I spoke with, said, well, you'll know all about it in the newspaper. Well, I didn't have to wait because there was a group of people out here telling me everything that was going on.
They're not fooling anybody any longer when you've got this many cops, and detaining Alex Jones at the border.
Get them on both sides. Yeah, you crook. Yeah, you're gonna go to jail like Ken Lay. Oh yeah, there's one right there. Hi. Hey, we're not your property. We're not your slaves. We're gonna defeat the New World Order. The New World Order is gonna be defeated. You realize that? I'm glad you do. Always does throughout history.
The boss. Boss is leaving.
Etienne Davignon is the honorary chairman of the Bilderberg Group, as well as the head of its steering committee. The committee he heads selects and invites each year's attendees. In the last decade, the list of attendees has been leaked to reporters by moles on the inside. Veteran newspaper reporter Jim Tucker has been covering the Bilderberg meetings for over 30 years and has physically attended more than 20. We traveled back to our hotel to see if Jim Tucker received the 2006 list.
First heard about Bilderberg in 1975, and I said, I don't believe it. That's not possible. Who in hell's Bilderberg? I spent 20 happy years with metropolitan newspapers. All the wires are clicking at my ear. That could not happen without me knowing about it. And the thing that first impressed me most was columns in 1957 by the late, great Westbrook Pegler, widely syndicated columnist. He wrote 2 lengthy columns about how approximately 100 leaders of international finance, heads of state, high public officials were meeting behind armed guards and closed doors on Jekyll Island, sealed off. What are these powerful internationalists doing? And why is it so secret? Why do they have armed guards outside? Why is it sealed off? The newspapers totally ignore it. Not a word. Total blackout in the United States. Since then, I've never stopped pursuing Bilderberg, or the whole international gangster organization led by Rockefellers and Rothschilds as they manipulate the world for their own selfish interest.
Jim, you've been waiting on the list. You normally get it on the first day. You haven't gotten it. We're told it might come in today. How important is that list?
It's absolutely essential, although identifying people outside, as we always do, is important too, to find out who is not on their own list. In recent years, someone from Europe has sent a machine copy with a letterhead and so forth without identifying himself. So far, I haven't heard from him. Well, Bilderberg assumed that name in 1954 at their first meeting as Bilderberg at the Bilderberg Hotel. It's a little bit like Shakespeare's As You Like It. They say to Shakespeare, what do you want to call this book? And he says, As You Like It, meaning whatever you want to call it. And they thought it was dictation, so one of his plays is called As You Like It, and the title has nothing to do with the play. So that's how the Bilderberg came by their name. Now, they had been meeting for half a century. The moneyed class had been meeting, but they decided they have to meet systematically every year, well planned in advance, in addition to maybe other smaller meetings throughout the year.
Sure this is the right turn, Jim?
No. Let's see if you can start. This is the global government. They are setting the world agenda. Inside right now, they're deciding on whether or not there will be a war with Iran. They're deciding whether or not taxes will increase, whether oil prices will be suppressed or increased. There's much more on the agenda that we'll be finding out in the fullness of time. But those are 3 items that are heavy on their list this year.
This is Jim Tucker, ladies and gentlemen. 27 years covering these crooks.
Mr. Tucker, pleasure to meet
The
you.
media said he was crazy, it didn't exist. Now we forced him.
120 of the world's most powerful men, heads of state from Europe, high officials of the United States government, Treasury, White House, state, defense. They're setting the world agenda now. The reason they want secrecy is because they're doing evil. Evil is done under the cover of darkness. Good works are done in the sunshine.
Hi, how you doing? Good.
Get off the property, please.
Well, Jim has some questions for you.
I need you to move off the property, please.
Okay.
Private property.
Sure.
It's a public sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, we are cooperating.
Thank you. Right onto the sidewalk.
Yeah, there's no implication that we aren't cooperating.
Right onto the sidewalk and stay there, please.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
Great.
Jim has some questions for you.
Again, I need you to stay right on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We actually checked with the city. The property line's actually right here.
Also,
That's good. Property line's actually right here.
We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the New World Order. David Rockefeller.
We saw David Rockefeller and the Corn Black at the beyond the hotel, and they had no bodyguards. One of my friends shouted, "Hey, Rockefeller!" and he turned back and he was afraid.
My name's Renee. I'm from Manitoba. Drove about 26 hours to get here, just to show that I'm against the Bilderbergers, just to fight for my freedoms, fight for my rights, make sure that my children can grow up in a free country.
My name is Daniel Estrelin, and I've been doing this for the last 15 years. I'm from Canada. I'm very proud of my country because, as you can see, there are a lot of people covering the Bilderberg conference. Last year, it took me 14 and a half hours to get to Munich. I was pulled off the plane in Milan. I was pulled off the plane in Munich. They interrogated me 4 hours in both places. I was able to call a friend, a journalist in Rome, as a result of his presence and others. Calling the Foreign Ministry Department in Italy, they backed off and they let me go. They basically told me that they're keeping an eye on me 24 hours of the day. The little hotel where we were staying at, Jim and I, out of the 20 rooms, 6 were occupied, 3 by the CIA and 3 by the German Secret Service. That's how serious these people are, and that's how afraid they are of actually what we may be able to reveal and what we actually do reveal publicly about the Bilderberger intents.
Daniel Estrelin has covered the Bilderberg meetings in Europe and North America for more than 15 years. His book, Club Bilderberg, has been translated into more than 20 languages and is a global bestseller. Estrelin has photographed many past Bilderberg meetings. Rockefeller frontman Henry Kissinger is always a key participant. Here you see the president of the CFR, Richard N. Haas, followed by Vice Chairman of Rothschild Europe, Franco Barnaby, who is speaking with Henry Kravitz. And behind them is Richard Holbrooke, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. The head of Daimler Chrysler, Jürgen Erich Schrempp, arrives by helicopter. Here, the owner of the Washington Post, Donald Graham, escorts Indra Nooyi, the head of PepsiCo. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, whose father, Prince Bernhard, founded Bilderberg, is a leading figure in the group. Of course, globalist kingpin David Rockefeller, seen here with his bodyguard, James Ford, always attends. The then newly appointed World Bank chief Paul Wolfowitz is photographed at Bilderberg 2005. It has been reported that Wolfowitz had attended previous meetings, while still the Deputy Secretary of Defense, a violation of the Logan Act. Under the Logan Act, it is a felony offense for any member of the federal or state government to meet with members of a foreign government without the express authority and authorization of the President or Congress. Put simply, it is illegal for members of the government to meet secretly behind closed doors with foreign power brokers due to the problems of corruption and espionage that it breeds. For this reason, many prominent politicians attend, but their names do not appear on the official list. Despite the Logan Act, the governor of New York's name, George Pataki, does appear on the list. and we were able to catch the governor on tape, walking with David Rockefeller at Brook Street. Multiple staff members inside Brook Street reported to us that Hillary Clinton attended for half a day. Several armored limos with diplomatic plates did arrive with police escorts and offloaded their passengers in the underground parking garage out of the sight of the press. Former World Bank President James Wolfensohn sardonically stared at our cameras.
Do you think they're upset about the fact that they're being exposed?
Well, I'm sure they are. I mean, look at the tinted windows. They don't want to be seen. They don't want even anybody to know they're here. So I'm sure they're ticked, you know, and that's why we're here to try to expose them.
Do you think that they were angry that they were on the front page of the local paper today? You think they're in there reading it right now, Jim?
Yes, but I don't think they're happy about it. They prefer nothing at all, no publicity. They prefer absolute secrecy.
Yeah, you better look away. We're not your slaves. You don't own me.
Did you get a list of the attendees and everything, or not?
No, I've asked for one under a slight variation of my name, and I don't know if I'll get it or not. Also, it could happen today. For the last 3 years, I get back to the hotel.
And there's a copy there waiting for you.
Well, somebody who does not identify himself. I mean, I'm not just not revealing the source. I don't know the source myself. But the facts, because they want the Bilderberg letterhead on it, and makes a nice memento.
Perfect.
Alex.
Yeah.
That's Chalabi, eh?
You think Chalabi?
No, I don't think. I know.
It looked like Chalabi, and it was a fat guy. Yeah. That was Ahmed Chalabi?
Yeah.
Oh my God, then they're really going to attack Iran.
Because I've seen this guy around a lot. This guy is too president.
I have it.
It's S, Scandinavian. Adrian Woolwich. Maria Monti. Over the last couple of years, they've been reeling with the amount of leakage that they've been experiencing, so it's getting harder and harder. But again, it will never get too hard for us because of the sources that we have inside are top-notch sources. People who are actually working for them, the Secret Service, the second layer, people in the Bilderbergers, the clerks, the administrative office, they're there. They are our eyes and ears, and every time there's something out, we always get the information.
That's Francisco Pinto Balsamao.
I think that's the Queen.
It's the Queen. Oh my God, you can't kiss her earrings.
You see her?
Yes. Oh my God.
The Queen of Holland.
What usually happens, the Secret Service guys who are protecting the Bilderberg delegates, the staff, the cooks, the chefs, when they actually get to see and to hear what some of these nasty people are talking about, they're the first ones to look for us and the first ones to make sure that we get the information from the meeting. We're very rigorous with information that does come out. We double, triple, and quadruple confirm the sources, make sure that all the information checks out. A lot of the stuff, the Bilderbergers have planted information, make sure that this disinformation nullifies the accuracy of the reporting, which is why we never publish the first thing we hear.
That looks like Rockefeller.
The decisions that these people take, again, they're not only decisions that affect business community, they affect politics, business, environment, across the entire spectrum. And these decisions are made and taken by a very elite group of people behind closed doors this year at the Brook Street Hotel. We are not privy to these decisions. We're not allowed to know what they're talking about. But we'll definitely feel the consequences of these decisions over the next 12 months when events which apparently by accident seem to happen, in fact, have been planned right here this year at Brook Street Hotel between 8th and 11th of June.
What does it do when you get 120 of the most powerful people in the world getting together to have meetings with government officials? I mean, that's amazing.
Well, it is what I mean is that they're planning the corporate agenda. They're not planning the democratic human journey agenda, in my opinion. Mussolini had a definition, is when the interests of the corporation take completely over from all other interests, and that's fascism.
He said it should probably be called corporatism.
Well, call it corporatism, call it fascism, call it neo-lib, neo-con. There's a whole variety of political words, depending on which side of the stripe you come from, to start with, which describes the thing. But what they are describing is the complete end of democracy, the end of what matters to people, the end of what happens to the human journey. And for that reason, I think this is revolting.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here in Canada today to stand up against the Bilderberg Group that is attempting to get rid of the sovereignty of the United States. The truth of your world government has now been exposed. We know you are ruthless. We know you are evil. To David Rockefeller, to the Rothschild representatives here, to the Queen of the Netherlands, to all of you, we tell you, you are not our queens. You are not our kings. You are not our gods. We do not belong to you. We are not your slaves. We stand as free humans, have stood since the beginning of time against the strong men, against the thugs, against the bullies. We will defeat your world government. We will defeat world taxation. We will defeat your control grid. God is on our side. I stand before the creator of the universe, and I ask the creator of the universe, as our founding fathers did in 1776, to lead, guide, and direct us, and to give us the power and the foresight and the understanding and the will to stand against your entire agenda, including your final plan of world population reduction of 80% that Henry Kissinger penned in 1973. Why do you put mercury in the vaccines, sodium fluoride in the water? Why? Why do you put cancer viruses in the vaccines? Why have you used depleted uranium now in 4 separate nations? You're arrogant. You have the sickness that elites have had throughout history in their literal and, in some cases, figurative ivory towers. You believe that you're invincible. You will and you are failing now. Your New World Order will fall. Humanity will defeat you. The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Bilderberg is an elite organization, and the way it works, the protocol of the meetings is the staff, after they're vetted out, they're told exactly how they're supposed to behave themselves, meaning that they can never address the attendees, they can never speak to them unless they're spoken to first, they can never look them in the eye. They have to approach them from the right side, the people who are right-handed, and from the left side, the people who are left-handed. They can never look them straight on. And needless to say, all the information that is being spoken during the conferences is under no circumstances allowed to come out. That's what they're told. They're threatened with not being able to find another job anywhere in the sector if they reveal any information to the press.
Richard Holbrooke? Ambassador Richard Holbrooke thought the peasantry wouldn't recognize him if he took a stroll off the grounds of Brook Street. Holbrooke cackled when I told him that we were not his slaves.
Holbrooke, we're not your slaves, Holbrooke. We're not your slaves. Holbrooke, we don't belong to you. We're not your property. Get back on the sidewalk. We're free humanity.
Yeah, there he goes. Howard. They love it. They love it.
Okay, we're going to be going around the back here, guys.
Hey guys, how you doing? There are several rings of security service. The American delegation at every Bilderberg meeting is usually protected by the CIA and a special division of the US Army. The British delegation is protected by the MI6. Israelis usually are protected by the Mossad. The Ottawa police, in this case, working for the security, they have very little, actually they don't have any information at all on what the meeting is about. They didn't know who the Bilderbergs are. Then there's an elite private firm protecting the perimeter, doing all the dirty work, such as shooing all the photographers and bothering the protesters. But you know, that's like piddly stuff. All the heavy stuff is done by the security service, such as the CIA, MI6.
Some years ago, my legs were a little bit stronger than they are now, and I'd crept over a fence under cover of darkness and approached. The cops started yelling and pointing at me, so I ran with speed I didn't know I still had, and some shots were fired, but they were far above my head. I mean, they were intimidating, but they were not really trying to kill me. Not when sharpshooters are fired far above, 20 feet above your head. Bilderberg was founded by David Rockefeller and the Rothschilds of Britain and Europe. They're still the main powers. Baron Evelyn D. Rothschild, a male, attended for many years. Rothschild is still represented. You'll see them on the list of participants. Somebody representing the Rothschild group. They are the main powers behind Bilderberg. The Dutch Shell is part of the Queen's fortune. Of course, the Rockefellers have always had heavy oil interests. That was the original source of their old money from the old man.
Jim just got the official Bilderberg letterhead list from his mole inside the Bilderberg group. Let's go look at it.
Wall Street Journal.
So Jim, you got the list.
Yeah. Did we identify Wolfowitz as being here because he's not on the list?
No, we positively identified Wolfenson.
Yeah, he's on the list.
Yeah, there's Wolfenson right there, James Wolfenson. But aren't there always people who aren't listed?
Yep. Over the years, we've identified like sometimes one, sometimes three people who are not on their own list who have attended.
Now, I think what is very difficult for most people to understand is how such a small group of 125 men and a few women control a population base of 6 billion people. Actually, it's much easier than you think. These people work on what I call systemic methodology, meaning that you take a pie, just imagine you take an apple pie and you slice this apple pie into lots of very small pieces, and you put in front of each one of these pieces your men or women of trust. And by controlling this individual, you control an entire organization. For example, if you take Paul Wolfowitz, who runs the World Bank, through him you can control the entire organization. You don't need to control what the dishwasher or the toilet cleaner thinks or does or believes in. You just need to control what he does and what he believes in, and what he does will permeate the entire organization. And that's how you control, with very, very small power base, an entire global population of 6 billion people.
Bilderberg is making great progress toward a world government. They have created a superstate in Europe called the European Union. They are intent on creating a Western Hemisphere Union called the American Union. NAFTA is to be expanded into every country in this hemisphere. As NAFTA expands, it will take on the role of the American Union. And only an educated, informed public can stop them in their tracks.
We went into downtown Ottawa and talked to locals to learn if they were aware of the elite meeting in their city. Hey guys, attention just for a second. I just need to tell you that a group just met here in Canada and they're trying to get rid of your sovereignty, merging you with the U.S. and Mexico. See, it's not funny, I'm serious. And your news isn't going to tell you about this. This is deadly serious, so I'm just letting you know and I'm telling you about it.
As they say, they are the guys that run the world. They make the decisions for and we just carry it out.
Sir, did you hear about the Bilderberg group meeting here in town, the 120 most elite people in the world?
No.
Hey, did you know that the elite's meeting here in town right now? Have you heard about it? The 120 crime bosses? None of you have heard of it? None of you guys have heard of the Bilderberg group? They're meeting right now. In the city, around 10% of the people were aware of the New World Order agenda.
When we traveled to Parliament, close to half of the people we randomly spoke to were informed.
Ma'am, what did you say about the American Union?
It's going to end up happening. We don't want it, but it's going to happen.
Why do you think?
Because the Bilderberg Group runs the world.
You have the Trilateral Commission that's also part of the Bilderberg, which is the United States, Europe, and Asia. But most of this is public knowledge. Nobody wants to believe that there are conspiracies, that world leaders are already elected before they're voted on. So here we know that Bernard Lord is part of the outer circle. I was surprised to read that Harper addressed the group in 2003 because my understanding was nobody gets into politics without becoming part of the Bilderberg group. And then you find out afterwards that that is the case, that they have...
Well, Bill Clinton went there in 91, George Bush Sr. back in like 85.
And Blair, same thing. Who we think that we're electing as leaders have already been pre-picked for us. Whether it's liberal or a conservative, they're already part of the group.
They own all the horses in the race.
They own the horses, and I understand that, for example, in the United States, it's a one-party system with two factions, though you think it's two different parties.
Oh, it is, yeah.
So
it's like Bill Clinton constantly vacations with the Bushes, and they call him their son, and they actually staged all that in '92, and all that's come out. It's just all staged. They're not going to let trillions of dollars slip through their hands. The good news is people are waking up, though. When you read human history, when you study it, all you see is elites trying to dominate, subterfuge, Machiavellian backstabbing, and somehow in the last 50 years they convinced Westerners that the government's fine, can do no wrong, trust them. How did this happen?
It's easy to lead sheep. I mean, people just follow. They don't want to believe these things will happen. No way, we'll just follow along with the norm. That's all. It's just makes it easier for everyone.
What's your view on losing Canada's sovereignty?
I like this country to stay as it is, and I love the United States to be there.
Back in Austin, the capital of Texas, the public was frighteningly unaware of the nation's peril.
Have you heard about the North American Union?
Not really, no. I don't watch TV.
No, I haven't.
Interesting. I was not aware of that.
I don't know exactly what you mean, so.
I don't think there's going to be a merger of the three nations.
No, I have not.
No.
No, I didn't know this was happening, so.
No. Yes, I have.
I haven't.
Oh, you have heard about it?
Yes.
After that big rally the other day, don't know about it?
I don't know about anything.
No, I have not.
Have you heard of the European Union?
I have, yes.
Are you aware of the European Union?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Have you heard about the European Union?
Heard about them.
Do you know about the European Union?
No.
Europe, 15-member group expanding?
A what?
15 nations of Europe merging in 2000.
Whatever.
In 2007, Jim Tucker continued his 30-year quest to expose the globalist by traveling to Istanbul, Turkey, the site of Bilderberg, 2007.
Jim Tucker, thank you for coming on, my friend.
It's always fun.
Jim, tell us what you saw today when you were out at the Ritz Hotel.
We were at the Ritz-Carlton. It looked like a typical Bilderberg scenario. They had the armed guards all around the place. They had platoons of cops in formation waiting for the disbursement. They also had cops all the way around the building, and they had all those high-tech things where every member can hear whatever's spoken in any language, instantly translate into his own language so they can keep up with it.
Spotlight then, I'm doing the same thing for American Free Press.
hotel open?
Çünkü İngilizce bilen var mı? Ben bilmediğim için. Let's just ask him directly.
Is Bilderberg meeting here this weekend?
You can go this way.
We had my two personal cops following me today. I was not aware of it because my nose is always sticking to the camera and my jaws are always flapping. But the TV crew said those guys are going to follow you. And their car followed us out to the hotel. Then they identified the two cops in plain clothes, not business suits, but sport shirts and so forth.
Yeah.
That's the car that's been on our ass?
Yeah.
I want to photograph him? Yeah. You are, aren't you? Well, they're very likely Bilderberg boys.
John Elkin, owner of Fiat and a fellow Bilderberger, thought that they could take a stroll off the grounds without being noticed by the commoners.
I was thinking about that.
This Bilderberg attendee sneered at our camera. This carload of kingpins gave the media a murderous look and seemed shocked that they would dare point a camera in their direction. In 2007, the Bilderberg Group received the heaviest global coverage in its history. Jim Tucker witnessed press conferences attended by hundreds of members of the media and a new generation of info warriors, like reporter Paul Dornanu of Romania, are tracking the elite, no matter where they hide.
Expunem acest grup Bilderberg.
Now, Jim, my governor, Rick Perry, it's in the front of the Dallas Morning News. The headline reads, Texas Governor Rick Perry to attend Bilderberg. What does it mean to have the governor of Texas in the Dallas Morning News just admitting he's going to Bilderberg Group?
It means he's a potential president, even as the obscure governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, lost his virginity at the Bilderberg meeting in Baden-Baden, Germany in 1991, and he's elected president the following year. Now, if he goes nowhere in a run for the White House in the years ahead, they'll drop him like an old shoe. They do that often, but officially, Bilderberg considers Governor Rick Perry a potential president of the United States. Yes, it's a violation of the Logan Act, for which Bill Clinton's White House was fined $300,000, which means the taxpayers paid it.
When Perry returned to Texas from Istanbul, we were determined to hold him accountable for his treasonous actions.
We don't want our roads, our water, our power plants, our entire infrastructure turned over to the New World Order. And we tell you now the people are rising up and learning what you're doing, and they're angry. And they're tired of it. Stop enslaving us. Stop setting up tyranny. Stop going along with the New World Order plan. If you've got any soul left, Rick Perry. The First Amendment still exists, Perry, and we're back here again tonight, telling you we're not going to put up with it. Long live the Republic! We shall prevail! Death to the New World Order!
One of the things that we're getting from this afternoon's conference, this morning conference was about the energy crisis, the price of oil. The afternoon conference, which started about 4 o'clock, 4:30, they were talking about one of the American delegates. I wasn't told who exactly it was talking about the the concern that the American citizens have had with the housing prices going down. So they're not investing that money. So what they needed to do is they needed to create the illusion that everything is going well. So what they're going to do over the next year and a half is to bring the market back up to 1998, 1999 levels. They're going to get all the suckers to invest whatever little money they have left over, and that's when they're going to make the economy bottom drop out. They need to destroy the economy because as we're running out of oil, when people don't travel, at least that's what they're saying, when people don't travel, when people don't have money, they don't travel, they don't spend any money, which means you don't waste a lot of oil and natural gas. That's actually the two people who are members of the Bilderberg Club.
It's actual members that are.
They're members of the Bilderberg Club who, for years and years and years, have been going and participating in all the conversations. They've always been dead on, always. And last year they said the oil prices are going to go up to 150. At the time it was 39, went up to 76, basically doubled. If it doubles again, it's going to be back to where these people.
If they attack Iran, it will at 150.
Well, the Iran thing is on the back burner. It was very much on the agenda last year, but from what I'm getting at this year's lunch, today's lunch, and a few people playing golf, the Iran is definitely sour, and they're not exactly sure how to do this thing. There's just too many consequences, too many repercussions. Anyway,
but they told them no. I mean, they said don't attack Iraq. Half of them back in.
Well, I think it's different. I think the neocons. I think the Bush administration is not in the same position as they were 2, 3, 4 years ago, as they're now. So the whole point is that
28% approval rating. Yeah.
We still have 2 days of Bilderberg conference because it started late, a day late. It's going to go until Sunday afternoon. I think it's going to go Sunday morning. Still going to have discussing something. Anyway, it's on all day tomorrow. So we'll find out a lot more about what they're going to be talking about tomorrow. The first item on the agenda is Eurasia, Russia, China, and the relation that the Russians and the Chinese have with the Americans. That's the first item on the agenda, first thing in the morning, and that's that discussion forum will be led by Richard Colonel.
The New World Order, as we're seeing it evolve, is exactly the opposite of what our founding fathers intended by developing the Constitution, the tripart form of government where you have division of powers between the legislative, judicial, and executive branches. When our founding fathers established the Constitution of the United States, they intended to have the local government as being the superior government over the state government and the federal government. Unfortunately, over the last 50 years, the reverse has occurred. Now we have an all-powerful federal government. Jefferson said when that happens, we will have a tyranny that is far worse than the one that they had just separated, which was, of course, England. We now have a government basically that is a tyrannical form of government in the federal government. It will become more so in the future because they have no accountability to the actual local person. The reason why we had local government as being the most powerful government in our Constitution was the fact that these were people that were being elected by the people over which they had jurisdiction. Now we have jurisdiction by bureaucracy at the federal level that has no accountability whatsoever to the local person. And that will always result in tyranny eventually.
Bilderberg's ultimate goal is a world government for the United Nations to evolve into a world government, and they're making progress, and we must stop that progress. The fact that the UN is now the standing army of, the NATO is now the standing army of the United Nations that was established at the 50th anniversary celebration of NATO, pending before the UN for at least 3 years now, is legislation to impose a direct tax on all the people on Earth, their favorite being a 10-cent tax on barrel at the oil head, but it was established the precedent of the UN directly taxing individuals throughout the world. And of course, the American Union, the NATO is to expand throughout the Western Hemisphere, evolve into the American Union. The dollar will be the euro, and already the groundwork is being laid for the Asian Pacific Union. The goal is to divide the world into 3 great regions for the administrative convenience of a world government, which the UN will become in our lifetime unless we win this fight.
I think that their plans are not coming together as quickly as they would have liked and would have hoped. For example, their idea for breakup of Canada, you know, the initial plan was for 1996. We stopped them because we found out what their plan was. That was in King City and Toronto. Hundreds of thousands of people came out onto the street protesting the possible breakup. So these people postponed their plans to the year 2000. Now they have postponed them to the year 2007. The United States and Canada more or less are one nation now because, you know, you have the military code sharing. So the United States and Canadian military basically are working on the same wavelength.
Congress has already been signing its authority over to international bodies, and the World Trade Organization already has more authority over our trade disputes than our own Congress. Can you speak to that? It's already happening.
Well, yes, the WTO has ordered Congress to change some of the trade laws, and Congress comes running back like a pitiful child and follows orders. And I forgot exactly what the deal was, something to do with tariffs or something. But because we're part of the World Trade Organization, they, in effect, nullified laws of Congress, saying you got to change that law.
We are adapting our Supreme Court, our Constitution, to fit within this legal model of the world. We are being homogenized into the world. Our military is being homogenized and standardized into the world format. Everything that's happening through NATO and all the rest. NATO is the military branch of the European Union. We're going to have one here for the North American Union to enforce our borders, supposedly. The ASEAN, or the new Asian Union, will have another, and so forth. This is going to be, within a couple of years, it looks like, standardized all around the world.
If you really look at the world, up until the Renaissance, what you had basically had the feudal society with the slaves and the slave owners. Then, you know, suddenly with the Renaissance, the ideals of Socrates, the ideals of Solon took forth. And if we kind of jump forward to the reign of Louis XI and the Henry VII in England, these people, for the first time in the history of mankind, the ideals of nation state, which defines the United States, the idea of the government working for the people, not people working for the government, the idea of the social good, of greater good for humanity, you know, came about. And if we jump to the 1760s, in Europe, the European intelligentsia, the people like Bailly and Lafayette, they realized that to destroy, you know, the old world order, to destroy the European monarchy, what they needed to do, they needed to create a state. And that's what the idea of the United States came from. This, you know, this Eden on earth of a nation where every man and woman were created equal. You had the freedom of speech, where you had for the first time in the history of mankind the ideal of nation state, of people, of governments working for the people, and not people working for the governments. And so these people like Lafayette and Bailly and other European intellectuals and thinkers, they've built themselves around the figure of Benjamin Franklin in the United States. And through this man, the idea was to create the Constitution of the United States and then import that Constitution back into Europe and use that Constitution to destroy the old world order, which was basically the old order led by the royalty of European nations. Now, the British East Indian Company, led at the time by Lord Shelburne, who was basically the treasurer of the royal family, and the man who ran the Committee of 300, or the Council of 300 was called at the time, realized that they were looking at a very, very grave crisis. So what they wanted to do, what they needed to do, they needed to destroy the idea of the United States as a nation. That's where the idea of the American Revolution came about. Now, thankfully, the Committee of the Council of 300, they lost that revolution. But what they tried to do, and they were able to succeed, is by forcing the French Revolution, they destroyed the concept of nation state. And we had to wait until after Napoleon III, and then we had to jump to the age of the Fifth Republic of de Gaulle until we finally saw that nation state building that the United States was built on. Now, what they've done, the Jacobean Terror, 1789, 1794, the French Revolution, that was the concept of terror created by the Council of 300, the same Council of 300 which today lives on in the body of the Bilderbergers. Now, the ideal hasn't changed. They're still pursuing the same goal, the goal to destroy humanity, to create the Nietzschean man-beast, And again, the Jacobean terror, the siege of Bastille, which basically a terrorist act, that's what it was. There was very little difference. In my conferences, I always talk about, if you want to understand 11th of September, you need to understand the French Revolution. What happened in Bastille is the same thing that happened on 11th September. The concept of man beast, the concept of terror for terror's sake, the idea of Napoleon, which is one of the things that people do not understand. Napoleon worked basically for the British government. He was the agent, not literally an agent, but because of Napoleon's terror, destruction for destruction's sake, the man destroyed all of Europe and debilitated the Europe. And as a result, the only superpower left standing was Great Britain, controlled by Council of 300, which were the forerunners to today's Bilderbergers. Well, the idea of world government, again, in the future world order, when you have slaves and slave owners, you don't need a population base of 6 billion people, because these people need to eat, otherwise they die. So you might as well just get rid of half of the population base. And again, we saw that in 1974 report, which was leaked years ago, the 9th of April, 1974, report signed by Henry Kissinger in the last dying months of Nixon's administration, when they were talking about reducing the population base by 3 billion people. It's on page 9 of that report. I think it's point 29C. They're looking at ways, again, they're looking at ways scientifically how to reduce the population base. And what is so terrifying about that document is they're using graphs, line charts, pie charts to talk about killing it's genocide, that's what it is, killing 3 billion people using graphs and pie charts. And if you jump to today and you see what is going on today, it's very easy to understand that what they were talking about in 74 is coming around today. In the very near future, if we're paying right now $75, $76 a barrel, and in the near future we're paying $150, $200 a barrel, what's going to happen is to transport apples from point A to point B is going to cost an exorbitant amount of money, which means that poor people will not be able to pay $50 per apple, and they will die. And the same will happen to people who live in Canada, who live in Scandinavian nations. Anywhere there is, you have this terror, you have to overcome these 40, 50 degree below zero winters. They will just die because they will not have heat to heat their homes. So the Bilderbergers don't physically need to eliminate 3 billion people by putting a gun to their head. They can do it in a very, very subtle way, again, using the population control. And we're seeing it right now as oil goes up, as the food quality goes down. The age of the $10,000 Caesar salads, or $10,000 kiwis, or 10,000 kilometers, kiwis that travel from New Zealand, then they get packaged in Norway, then they're sent to Spain, and then finally get to the United States where they're sold, in Loblaws, are over. If you want to eat kiwis, you better grow them themselves. If you want to eat bananas, you better grow them themselves. I think the future of humanity is based, the survival of humanity is going to be based on our ability to live in much smaller community. If not, unfortunately, we're playing into the hands of the Bilderbergers and the world elite.
One of the things that we need to recognize in infrastructure is what causes the economy to grow. Yes, we need private property rights. Yes, we need a good economy. But the economy is also dependent upon our transportation system of being able to get products from one area to another. The whole Agenda 21 concept compartmentalizes that economy. In other words, they environmentalists want us to be able to grow and produce everything that the local region needs. We won't need it. They do not want us to have this transportation. They do not want us to have the ability to draw tomatoes from South America into the United States. They want us to, if we cannot produce it in the United States during the middle of winter, then we shouldn't have it. If we cannot produce it in your local community, then we shouldn't have it. This is all part of their vision, their view of sustainable development. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way they elected to do it. Why? Because they believe, one, that nature is God, and that two, they want to have control. The more they can control, the better they can be able to accomplish what they want in our lives. One of the things that most people do not understand is most of the environmental laws that we have created over the last 40 years have come from a very small group of people through what is known as the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. This itself has been created and funded and sponsored by principals like Prince Philip or Prince Charles, as well as the Rockefeller Foundation. If you think back, not very many years ago, if you talked about the Bilderbergers, if you try to talk about the Trilateral Commission or the Club of Rome, you would be called some sort of conspiracist nut. Those organizations, we were told, did not exist. And certainly did not have an agenda that we claimed that they had. Now it's all out in the open. They will lie and they will conspire to keep the truth from the people until they no longer can, and then they'll paint it as just something that's normal. But think about it. Think just a moment about it. You have 135 people roughly in the Bilderbergers. You have about 175 in the Trilateral Commission. These people are making policy decisions for every single human being on planet Earth. Somewhere less than 500 people if you look at it in total, maybe 1,000, doesn't matter. These people are making decisions for the entire world. Do you really want that? One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that this concept of regionalization has been around for a long time. In 1973, the Club of Rome actually published a diagram showing that they wanted to divide the world up into 10 different regions, financial regions. They called them actually financial kingdoms, in which each kingdom would have its own separate economic integrity, so that they would be able to carry forth the types of supervision, the types of economic flow and so forth that is necessary to stabilize what is going on in the world and provide the mechanism, the structure, architectural structure to begin the population reduction that they've always been wanting to promote. In order to achieve their idea of world government, or global governance as they now call it, they wanted to actually divide the world up into 10 economic regions. They called them 10 kingdoms, but that was kind of a language that just didn't fit very well within the psyche of the American people and Europeans at the time, so they changed it to financial regions, and that's what it's been called ever since. It's one of the issues in which all of the member organizations of this effort, of the Anglo-American faction, have been working on. The Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, the Bilderbergers, the CFR, and so forth have all been working on this. And here you can see the diagram of how they envisioned it back in 1973. When it came out in 1995, Our Global Neighborhood was the United Nations Commission on Global Governance. This is where they begin to finally put it together in the form of a document. This document has been the actual template that's been using ever since 1995. If you look at what's actually going on, what they called regional groups, not only are this 500 or 1,000 people actually developing the policy for the world, they're developing policy that benefits them, not us. I worked closely with the EPA and the U.S. Forest Service and many environmental organizations, and it became very obvious to me that they really weren't interested in protecting the environment. They were interested in advancing an agenda. And so I began to do research as to what it is that was motivating them and where they were going. And I was shocked to realize that at least in the leadership, both of our government and the non-governmental organizations that were involved in this, were what's called pantheists, the belief that nature is God, and therefore their role was not in serving the American people, but in protecting nature from the American people. It was actually 100 years ago with Muir in starting the Sierra Club and so forth, and he, again, was a pantheist, the belief that nature is God. I won't go into that particular aspect of it, but he truly believed that we need to set vast acreages of land aside for the principal purpose of allowing nature to go her own way, because in essence, nature is the foundation of all life, and therefore we must protect it at all costs. It actually languished for about 100 years until well, not 100, about 60 or 70 years until the 1960s with the advent of the New Age movement and the counterculture movement. And then it began to take on some real power.
Which thought it was counterculture, but really foundation funded the whole time.
That's right. The whole counterculture movement was orchestrated and funded not only by the foundations, but was inspired by a pantheistic belief system, a cult religious belief system, whose origins are found in theosophy, or the belief that nature is God, and taken through what is now known as Lucifer Trust, which is the organization for the elite to implement their ideas, headed up by Alice Bailey in the first half of the 20th century. The whole global warming issue is a farce. It's a sham, basically, to advance this agenda and create a condition in which the United States, the citizenry of the United States, is going to be willing to give up our sovereignty in order to control what they perceive as a doomsday scenario, that if they don't get a handle on it within the next 10 years, that's what we've been hearing now. Actually, if you remember back in the early 1990s, they said we had 10 years to do it or we're doomed. Well, now it's been 15 years ago now, and of course nothing's changed. Well, the same thing is going on right now. Global warming is occurring, don't get me wrong, but it's not caused by man. We had what was called a little ice age back in the 1700s and 1800s. And during that period of time, we were able to, there's a high correlation between sunspot activity and the energy output of the sun. There were almost no solar flares, no sunspots during the early 1800s. And it got about a degree and a half colder than it is right now. It is very interesting that the solar radiation and the Earth's temperature are highly correlated. In fact, they can actually be almost on a daily coordination. We had a major solar eruption back in 1998 at the same time as we had El Nino, and we had a solar spike within a week, a temperature increase within a week of that event that peaked out within a few days, about a week or so, and this is global. This isn't just the United States or a local regional area. This was global. And the two in combination, the El Nino and a solar spike in which we had a major solar eruption that was pointed right at Earth, actually changed the Earth's temperature right away. And if you go back into the 1700s, you can actually see the correlation between the Earth's temperature and the emissions of radiant energy by the sun.
One of the ironies, I think, of our times is the fact that during the 1960s and so forth, they begin to have a dogma that the environment is being destroyed by human beings. And this was perpetrated or spread out through the media. You can't watch any nature program on chimpanzees, whales, it doesn't really matter, without coming away from the fact that human beings are a virus. We're killing planet Earth, according to this media hype that we've had ever since the 1960s. Now it's global warming. You can't hardly go through a week without hearing some scare story about global warming, that if we don't stop it in the next few years, the Earth is going to boil up and blow away, even though that there's been times in history where it's been much warmer than it is today, and of course, obviously, times in history where it's been much colder. None of these things really by themselves really are caused necessarily by human activity. It's a natural cycle. We can destroy the environment. We can destroy ecosystems. But now we have the incentive to maintain ecosystems, to manage ecosystems, but that's not good enough. We can actually manage ecosystems better than nature can herself. We can make ecosystems healthier, but that's not an alternative. Their alternative is that you have no use. That's the only solution that they have for protecting the environment, is you cannot use it. You cannot use it. You must protect it. You must put it in the form of wilderness, whatever the case might be. Well, nonetheless, we cannot use it. Humans are the cause of the problem.
We have many people in our university systems right now, PhDs and so forth, that really believe that we must reduce our human population by 70, 80, even 90% in order to protect Mother Earth. Many of these people actually believe that there should be wholesale slaughter of human beings in one form or another, either through disease or actual government programs of some sort or another. The actual Wildlands Project itself that I fought back in the 1990s calls for the reduction in human population of 80% in the next 50 years. They don't say how to get there, although they do make it very clear that they would probably do it through agricultural means. They really truly believe that if fertilizers and so forth cause ecological destruction, because they believe that, then we must reduce the use of fertilizers, and it's fertilizers and genetic improvement and so forth that have caused the green revolution that fed the world from the 1960s on. If we eliminate that, we'll only have food production enough for about a third of the global population that we have today. That would eliminate the population within one generation. One of the things that Carol Quigley, one of the foremost historians of the 20th century, said after going through all the documentations of the global elite for at least 2 years, said in his book, Tragedy and Hope, towards the end of the 20th century, the expert will replace the democratic voter in control of the political system. This is because planning will inevitably replace laissez-faire in the relationship between government and business. This planning may not be single or unified, but it will be planning in which the main framework and operational forces of the economic system will be established and limited by the experts on the governmental side, and then the experts on the economic side will do their planning within these established limits. And so what Carol Quigley is saying is that by the 21st century, we are going to be living in a planned society controlled by the experts. Now, look back, now that we're in the 21st century, has not that occurred? It has, just as he said was going to happen. But of course, he had access to the records of what they were intending to do. But it actually gets worse. Back in 1965, the Department of Health and Education and Welfare, HEW, sponsored a study to define how they're going to get from where they were then in 1965 to where we are now in the 21st century. They came out with a report in 1969 called the Behavioral Science Teacher Education Program that's now fully integrated within our educational program.
And this is what they said, and I want to have you hang on to your hats because you will not believe what they planned to do back in 1965-69 and what is happening actually today. He said, calculations of the future and how to modify it are no longer considered to be an obscure academic pursuit. Long-range planning and implementation of plans will be made by a technological scientific elite. This will strain the democratic fabric to the ripping point. The Protestant ethic will atrophy as more and more enjoyed a varied, leisured, and guaranteed sustenance. Work as a means to, and an end of living will diminish. Most people will tend to be hedonistic, and a dominant elite will provide the bread and circuses to keep social dissension and disruption at a minimum. A small elite will carry society's burdens. The resulting impersonal manipulation of most people's lifestyles will be softened by provision for pleasure-seeking and guaranteed physical necessities. The controlling elite will engage in power plays largely without the involvement of most of the people. And that is so true today. Most people have no idea what's going on in the international arena, have none. Almost all of this is being done in secrecy. Going on with this report, the society will be a leisurely one. People will study, play, and travel. Some will be in various stages of the drug-induced experiences. Each individual will receive at birth a multi-purpose identification which will have, amongst other things, extensive communications and control uses. Each individual will be saturated with ideas of information. Each will be self-selected. Other kinds will be imposed overtly by those who assume the responsibility for the other's actions. Relatively few individuals will be able to maintain control over their opinions. Most will be pawns of competing opinion molders. It's amazing how back in the 1960s they began the process of getting us to where we are right now. If you look at society today, almost every one of the characteristics that I read have come true. We are living in a planned society. We are living focused on leisure and recreation. We live in a drug-induced society. All of the things that they talked about in the 1960s have become a reality by the 21st century. This is the level of extent of control that they have. Most people's opinions are not done through education and through knowledge. They're done by molding your ideas. And that's why it's very hard for the average person to understand the fact that we're moving into a global society that is totally controlled by puppeteers, the global elite. And moving towards their ultimate objective of having world government, they have created various crises along the way over the last 100 years. World War I, as we've talked about, was contrived. World War II was contrived. We got the United Nations as a result of World War II, which was one of their big goals. Even though they denied the fact that they ever intended to have the United Nations as a world government, some of their more esoteric documents show very clearly that that's what they intended right from the start. And we're starting to see that now with the Commission on Global Governance. All the international treaties that we're looking at, especially the environmental treaties, basically are like these strands over Gulliver and Gulliver's Travels. One strand does not necessarily trap us, but when you have hundreds of these international treaties and all of these regulations, when you have the North American Union where you give up your basic sovereignty to a group of international bureaucrats, all of these things are strands that literally tie us down to the point that we no longer have freedom to cause development. We no longer have economic freedom. We no longer have a free market enterprise. We no longer have the ability to profit from innovation, and that will ultimately destroy us. Now that we no longer have war to maintain stability within the population, and maintain control, which is kings and queens and bureaucrats and tyrants and so forth through history have used war, we have to have an alternative form of terror in order to maintain the stability of people and the allegiance of people behind their government. That is now taking the form of terrorism. It's a perfect recipe. Back in 1967, there was a report called the Iron Martin Report that was released, calling for environmental holocaust and so forth to accomplish the same thing. That worked to a point, but it did not take them where they fully wanted to go. And they now have this mechanism of always the constant fear of terrorist attack to keep us off our feet, to keep us willing to give up our freedoms in order to gain peace and security. Carroll Quigley, in his book Tragedy and Hope, basically said they were willing to work with communists, they're willing to work with fascists, they're willing to work with any of these isms or whatever, because those groups control their population and they want to control the population. So they're more than willing to work with those groups. They say they're capitalists, but understand their form of capitalism is nothing more than controlled economies. It's not true free markets. It's not even true capitalism. It's capitalism only to a certain percentage of the population that are part of the global elite or part of the upper crust. In many ways, it's either crony capitalism or a monopoly, because those are the people, those people that rise to the top, and there are not going to be very many of them, that benefit from this fascist form of government.
In Evian, France in 1991, standing before the Bilderberg Group, the apex of the world government power structure, David Rockefeller defined the New World Order as a system of world government serving the international banking elite. For decades, the banker-owned media would attack anyone who dared to warn the public that a dictatorial world government was being constructed right under their nose, and that national sovereignty was being deliberately destroyed. And now, after years of denial, the media and the elite themselves are proudly announcing that not only is world government real, but it is the answer to the financial crisis that they carefully engineered. Suddenly, the Wall Street Journal tells us that the North American Union is here, and that getting rid of the dollar for a common currency with Canada and Mexico is good. The Financial Times of London, published by a member of the Bilderberg Group, crowed that a dictatorial world government had been kept in the shadows for our own good, and that it was now time for it to emerge from behind the curtains of national security. White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel stated on record that they can't let this crisis go to waste.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
And Henry Kissinger, who gave Barack Obama his first job out of college, told national television that the economic collapse was a great opportunity to bring in the New World Order. He went on to say that Barack Obama was the perfect person to sell it to the world.
But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
In June of 2006, our team traveled to Ottawa, Canada, to gather intelligence on the shadow government's agenda for the coming years.
I think that's the Queen.
Investigative journalist and best-selling author Daniel Estulin had been tracking the Bilderberg Group for more than 16 years. His moles inside Bilderberg informed him that the elite were planning to first run the price of gas up to $150 a barrel, unimaginable in 2006. He also reported that after suckering the middle class back into the stock market, the group was going to implode the subprime mortgage market and destroy public confidence.
Well, one of the things that we're getting from this morning and this afternoon's conference, this morning conference was about the energy crisis, the price of oil. The afternoon conference, which started about 4 o'clock, 4:30, they were talking about one of the American delegates. I wasn't told who exactly it was talking about the the concern that the American citizens have had with the housing prices going down, so they're not investing that money. So what they needed to do is they needed to create the illusion that everything is going well. So what they're going to do over the next year and a half is to bring the market back up to 1998, 1999 levels. They got to get all the suckers to invest whatever little money they have left over, and that's when they're going to make the economy bottom drop out. They need to destroy the economy because as we're running out of oil, when people don't travel, at least that's what they're saying, when people don't travel, when people don't have money, they don't travel, they don't spend any money, which means you don't waste a lot of oil and natural gas. That's the afternoon.
So how does this source, just ballpark, so you have the sources.
Well, actually, there are two people who are members of the Bilderberg Club.
It's actual members.
They're members of the Bilderberg Club who for years and years and years have been going and participating in all the conversations. They've always been dead on, always. And last year they said the oil prices are going to go up to 150. At the time it was 39, it went up to 76, basically doubled. If it doubles again, it's going to be back to where these people say.
They attack Iran and will it,
Year after year, Estulin and other reporters like Jim Tucker are able to report on future events with stunning accuracy, all because they know the agenda of the Bilderberg Group. The Bilderberg Group sits at the top of the world power structure. 125 of the richest and most influential individuals on the globe make up its membership. From Istanbul, Turkey to Chantilly, Virginia, we have tracked the elusive Bilderberg Group. Bilderberg always insist on a media blackout. By June of 2008, we had already figured out that Barack Obama was the elite's puppet of choice. The national media claimed that during the weekend the Bilderberg Group was scheduled to meet, that Obama had speaking engagements set for Chicago and the Midwest. We knew better. In a classic bait-and-switch, the Obama campaign told the press corps to get on Obama's campaign plane and that Obama would join them on the flight to Chicago. Campaign staff then slammed the door shut. The fawning press had been shanghaied as Obama's campaign aircraft lifted off without Obama.
Robert, why were we not told about this meeting and that the senator wouldn't be on our flight until the doors were shut and we were about to taxi to take off?
Again, we had a desire, Senator Obama had a desire to do some meetings. Others had a desire to meet with him tonight in a private way, and that's what we're doing. We set up these meetings. They're being done tonight. Again,
Is there more than one meeting? Is there more than one person with whom?
I'm not going to get into all the details of the meetings. I don't know that I've got a ton more different answers for all of your questions.
Obama wasn't going to Chicago. He had a meeting to attend, a secret meeting.
Initially, it was believed that the secret meeting took place at Clinton's Washington, D.C. home. Obama's spokesman denied that, but won't confirm where the former rivals met. He also declined to comment on their topics of discussion.
For a day and a half, the mainstream media engaged in a wild goose chase, trying to find out where Hillary and Obama had gone. 3 cover stories later, the corporate press had to admit they had no idea where the 2 candidates had gone. And to this day, Clinton and Obama aren't talking.
Plenty of sources knew about this meeting, told us and others that it was at Hillary Clinton's house, but clearly it wasn't.
In 2008, the trail led us to the Westfields Marriott Hotel, right outside Washington, D.C. We just flew into Washington, D.C. We're driving to the Westfields Marriott. Tomorrow, the hotel's closed throughout the week into the weekend for the Bilderberg Group meeting. But we're going to check in the night before. They're going to kick us out tomorrow. So we're going directly into the belly of the beast. The hotel will be filled with at least 5 spy agencies: CIA, Defense Intelligence, Mossad, European Union security. We checked into the Westfields Marriott 48 hours before hotel guests were scheduled to be thrown out ahead of the annual meeting. The building was nestled in the heart of the military-industrial complex, with the National Reconnaissance Office and Raytheon just a stone's throw away. The plan tonight is to try to not get arrested, dodge the security, get in there, get some footage of the elite arriving in the morning, because some arrive before they officially lock it down, and then getting out of the building. That's our plan. I'm also going to be getting a call by a international syndicated radio show, Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and all week he's getting briefings from me every night about things as they develop. George, we're sitting here in the room. As the phone rings with your producer, Tom Danheiser, to put me on, the fire alarm goes off. So everybody is exiting the building. I know this is a setup. They timed it exactly when this happened. Open the door. I want them to hear the fire alarm. Open the door. I want people to hear this live to the 16 million people listening. George, do you hear that? Now, they're going to use this as an excuse. The Westfields Marriott, right outside D.C. and Chantilly, they want to use this to flush us out of here. They're very upset. Everybody that covers Bilderberg, I was detained 2 years ago, interrogated, screamed at. They said Bilderberg was upset about me, wanted to stop us. This is guaranteed. Everywhere we go, we're followed. We have another hotel across town as a base of operations. They were there
questioning us, getting in our faces. We're being followed everywhere. I need everybody's support right now. I pray to God they don't try to set me up. They may have tried to concoct this as some way to say, you know, look, they didn't leave during a fire drill, assessing me knowing I would stay and do the interview. But again, the moment the phone rang with Tom Danheiser, the moment the phone rang, the guys answered it, I'm standing there, the alarm goes off. It's going off right now. The guests are exiting the hotel out there. Of course, there's no fire. This is just absolutely insane. I noticed, too, that there was over 100 security people here today, but tonight we got back and it was a total ghost town, and this is what's insane. We have a security guy walk up to us 30 minutes ago, about 25 minutes ago, before this happened, and said, "What are you guys doing?" We said, "We're just walking around checking out the artwork in the hotel," which we actually were admiring it, but we were also going around getting some footage. And they said, "Well, no cameras allowed." We said, "Fine." And then he said, "Yeah, we had somebody do a fire alarm a few weeks ago, and me and Rob, my camera guy, were going, why is he telling us about a fire alarm?" I forgot that part, George. These bastards have done this. I don't know how. They're planning to try to set us up or something, but this is incredible. We are here in the middle of this right now, George. There you go, stay there, keep it locked. Let's go. Let's get out of here now, Richard. Don't screw around anymore. We got out of here on exactly the right time. Is this the way out? Yeah. We got a car right behind us. We made about, what, 5 turns and 6 turns, the same car's following us. Now he looks like he's following us into a... He came out of Bilderberg, he came out of the Westfield.
He's being a little bit subtle, but...
Not too. So there he is. That's him over there in the blue car.
Yeah. We're headed back to the Marriott here in Chantilly, Virginia, the scene of Bilderberg 2008. We successfully infiltrated the last day and a half inside, got out with some great stuff. We've been tailed, and now we're going back to cover the dignitaries, the elitists, as they arrive. And right now is the prime time for them to start arriving for the next 3-4 hours. We took about a 30-minute break. I'm sure we missed a few, but it doesn't matter. So we've got scores of people that just organically are listeners, info warriors that are out here taking action.
And we're going to be out here for the next 3 days while you try to chart the future of our destiny. We're taking our destiny back. You're not our gods or our masters.
We witnessed at least 7 convoys of armed Secret Service entering the Westfield's Marriott, and internal sources confirmed that both candidates did attend at least one meeting inside the conference. While the Bilderberg Group was 100% successful in 2008 at keeping their name out of the mainstream media, they did not fare as well when it came to the exploding independent press. During the entire 2-day event, anti-New World Order protesters and alternative media encircled the hotel.
You are being exposed everywhere, from David Rockefeller, from John Edwards, from Bill Clinton. Your game of secrecy is over. You're gonna pay. Get him. It's up close. You piece of filth. You piece of trash.
This is Bernanke, man. Bernanke, you're going down.
Obama, we know you're here, Obama. You cleared your schedule for the next 3 days. We know you're in Virginia.
Arch criminals! New World Order scum! We are not your slave scum! Brave Americans came from all over the United States and bullhorned the main conference hall at close range as the global power brokers schemed inside. You are criminals! You control the central bank, you control the currency, and you're turning our beautiful country and world into a nightmare! The global elite are desperate to keep their organizational meetings a secret. They are keenly aware that if the population discovers that policy is being developed covertly by powerful special interest, the people will revolt.
It is our duty to expose these criminals. It's a criminal act under federal law for federal officials to have private meetings to discuss world policy with non-federal workers. So everybody from the State Department, Treasury Department, White House, Defense Department, and others who show up, as they always do, they're committing a criminal act simply by being here to attend a secret meeting with officials from other countries to discuss U.S. policy in the world. So literally it's a criminal act. And every newspaper, every broadcaster has a patriotic duty to expose these scum and the evil they project.
The election primaries served as a great diversion, while the true future course of the nation was being set behind closed doors.
You've got, obviously, the Bilderberger Group, founded by the former Nazi Prince Bernhard of Holland. You've got the Trilateral Commission, founded by David Rockefeller's Zbigniew Brzezinski. They're the ones who ran the Carter administration. Everybody in the Carter administration, from Carter and Mondale and Volcker and Brzezinski, were all members of the Trilateral Commission.
Founding member of rap sensation Public Enemy, Professor Griff, gave us his view of the Obama phenomenon.
Barack Obama's been given a pass by the Blue Bloods. He's been given the okay by certain secret societies for them to let him in. I truly believe imperialism and fascism needs a facelift. And that facelift is going to have to be black. And the reason why I believe that, simply because I think they're trying to go into Africa. Well, they're already in Africa. But they want to totally control all the natural minerals that they're going to need to carry themselves into the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd centuries. You follow me? So I think they have to go through a phase of galvanizing the masses of dark-skinned people that truly believe that change needs to come, but the change that they're talking about is not necessarily change for the better as far as the masses of the people. It's probably a better change for them. It's not going to change for us, the little man on the totem pole. And no one looks at the agenda. As long as he positions himself right, have the right tie on, have the right smile, repeats the slogans over and over and drives it home, the average American is just going to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. And we don't even know what the agenda is.
Writing in his 1964 book, With No Apologies, Senator Barry Goldwater said, "The Trilateral Commission is intended to be the vehicle for multinational consolidation of the commercial and banking interest by seizing control of the political government of the United States. The Trilateral Commission represents a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power: political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical. What the Trilateral Commission intends is to create a worldwide economic power superior to the political governments of the nation-states involved. As managers and creators of the system, they will rule the future." Bilderberg issues executive decisions and prime directives to its subdirectorates for implementation. The Trilateral Commission takes the Bilderberg Group agenda and executes it through regional roundtable groups throughout Europe, Asia, and the Americas. The Council on Foreign Relations serves as the managing roundtable group in the United States sector. The Council on Foreign Relations has dominated every administration since the days of FDR.
The way in which they make policy and rule is that they are a polycentric oligarchical system. You have to be a finance oligarch. Remember, this is not a society ruled by generals, not by priests, not by bureaucrats, not by demagogues, none of those, but by bankers. Bankers rule, and the bankers set up these institutions. They set up things modeled on the Royal Institute for International Affairs, Chatham House, and the Milner Round Table of the period right after the Boer War, so even before World War I. You had the British setting up these round tables, institutes with publications and conferences, and this is how they make policy.
Upon Obama's inauguration, members of the Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, and CFR flooded into every position of power in the executive branch, replacing Trilateral Commission and CFR members who previously filled the positions during the Bush administration.
When you look at the U.S. ruling class, you'd have to say that they're a really pathetic bunch of failures and bunglers. They are a miserable excuse for a ruling class. And that's one of the big problems we have, is you go from Clinton to Bush to Obama. What stays the same is the ruling elite that gives these puppets the orders that they act on. And these orders are wrong-headed, let's say, to say the least. They're basically bankrupt. They're going to lead to the collapse of this civilization. What they're doing is using the existence of the United States as a formerly powerful nation state to act out their Wall Street fantasies of world domination and maintaining their capital structures and maintaining their system of looting. And this can't be done. So the basic question is, they've hijacked our country and you got to take it back from them. You've got to drive Wall Street out of the government, and at that point you'd have a reasonable chance of getting back to prosperity and some kind of peace and order in international affairs.
We had a chance to speak with economist and author George Humphrey.
They have created a power elite, and we're not talking about the millionaire down the street. You can't even be a member of their club unless you're a multi-billionaire. And friends, this is not about rich versus poor. This is about a very, very small handful of the worst criminal element on this planet, manipulating and destroying the good people of this nation and of this world.
About this Obama with change. Look at the people he's put in to mastermind the economic recovery. Larry Summers. I love it. Every time they talk about Larry Summers, he's always brilliant. He's another brilliant one. He's the one that helped dismantle the Glass-Steagall Act, the banking act that was put in place in the 1930s, so the banks couldn't become the banksters that they become.
In the 1990s, you had the beginning of the derivatives bubble, thanks to people like Alan Greenspan, Rubin, Summers, a lot of the people who are now back in the Obama administration. And the derivatives, I think, are the centerpiece of this entire problem today.
These are the same people, Geithner from the Treasury Department. Could you imagine that? Now we have the U.S. Treasury Secretary, who also is a Robert Rubin protege of the Larry Summers group, that dismantled Glass-Steagall and broke apart the regulations that would have prohibited the banks and brokerages from becoming these criminals. He was the former president of the New York Federal Reserve, and now he's our Treasury Secretary. And as we all know, the Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express. It's a private bank. And now we've put this guy in charge of it? I mean, Wall Street has hijacked Washington in broad daylight.
Every single one of his appointments support the status quo. Every one of his appointments are there to screw the American people. Every single one of his appointments are people who are working to bring down the Republic and the Constitution of this country.
Secretary of the Treasury, Timothy Geithner, Bilderberg Group and Trilateral Commission member. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is a Bilderberg and CFR member. She is also married to Trilateral Commission member William Jefferson Clinton. Ambassador to the United Nations Susan Rice, Trilateral Commission. National Security Advisor General James L. Jones, Bilderberg, Trilateral Commission, and CFR. Deputy National Security Advisor Thomas Donilon, Trilateral Commission, CFR. Special State Department Envoy Henry Kissinger, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, and CFR. Chairman, Economic Recovery Committee, Paul Volcker, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations. The Director of National Intelligence, Admiral Dennis C. Blair, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, CFR. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, CFR. Deputy Secretary of State James Steinberg, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, CFR. State Department Special Envoy Richard Haas, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, and President of the CFR. Obama Presidential Advisor Alan Greenspan, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, CFR. State Department Special Envoy Richard C. Holbrooke, Bilderberg, Trilateral, CFR. And the list goes on and on.
Today, I'm pleased to announce members of my science and technology team. Dr. John Holdren has agreed to serve as Assistant to the President for Science and Technology and Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy.
John P. Holdren is the resident science czar of the Obama White House. He's the head of the White House Council on Science and Technology, key advisor operating out of the new Executive Office building in Washington, D.C. This man is a Malthusian fanatic. He's a follower of Bentham and Malthus and Darwin. In other words, the main philosophers of the British Empire in the 19th century and the fountainhead of reactionary and anti-human ideology in that time frame. He's a radical environmentalist, an ecological fanatic, a green kook, a wacko, except that it's also very sinister because the implications of his belief structure and his world outlook are genocide. He is, in particular, an enemy of the traditional American point of view on the world. Holdren polemicizes in his books against people he calls the cornucopians, people who think that the bounty of nature and of production is unlimited. He says that's not true. There are limits to growth, and we have to live within those limits. He polemicizes against growthsmanship, that you can grow your way out of a crisis. According to Holdren, that door has been permanently closed on all of us. And in particular, he says he hates the moonshot mentality of the average American, and that is to say, with the right kind of national mobilization, technology, and political will, you can do just about anything, including putting a man on the moon or putting other people out into space. So Holdren is anti-American in this deep way. He is a pessimist culturally and historically. He calls himself a neo-Malthusianism. Now, the heart of his outlook is what he calls, he says that population is the root of all human problems. In other words, people pollute. Humanity is a cancer on the face of the earth. The one big problem in the ecosystem is the role of humankind. And of course, in reality, the existing ecosystem could not survive without the constant contributions of human production. It's very easy to show that. Holdren started off in the 1970s with Paul Ehrlich, who was a charlatan and an obscurantist and a crackpot who wrote the book The Population Bomb. Ehrlich was convinced that world population was growing out of control and that this was going to lead to a breakdown of human civilization sometime in the late 20th century. And it goes together with the campaign of the limits of growth, the Club of Rome, Aurelio Peccei, and the rest of these people. This is kind of the intellectual milieu that Holdren comes out of. Now, there was no population bomb. It's just not true. It never happened. Population in Europe is falling.
if you just look at the self-renewal of these populations. Same thing in Japan, same thing in Russia. They've all got a demographic problem which has nothing to do with overpopulation. It has to do with shrinking population. China has demographic problems that were caused by going along with this two-child per family policy. The U.S. would be experiencing demographic decline if it weren't for the flow of immigrants into the country. So there never was a population bomb. But Holdren does not revise or change his pseudoscientific outlook because of this. Population is the problem. Now, he looks around the world, writing in the early 1970s in one of his textbooks, and he says, some countries have so much population that they ought to be triaged. We should cut them off, give them no more food aid, no more credit, no more help of any kind. Well, what are the countries? He says India is probably on the list. India, hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, and Holdren says cast them into the outer darkness. Then Bangladesh, with a couple of 100 million people, Holdren says for sure Bangladesh has got to be triaged. Give them nothing. Now again, the note of genocide. The idea that whole countries should be consigned to doom puts Holdren in a league which is far beyond Hitler in terms of the number of victims that these policies would result in. He hates science and technology. He wants to limit science and technology. He regards them as a threat to what he thinks of as the social order and also to the crackpot views of charlatans and fakers like himself. He says he wants to create a science court that would decide which inventions could be put into practice and which would have to be banned. This is unbelievable. This would essentially strangle the source of human progress and consign us all into a stagnation and ruin, which would never end. Holdren believes that there's a world optimum population, or carrying capacity. Now, the idea of carrying capacity comes from the writings of a Venetian kook by the name of Gianmaria Ortes, O-R-T-E-S, writing in 1790 or thereabouts. Ortes said that the limit of the world population was 3 billion people, and that if you went beyond that, you'd have famine and starvation and death, and it would always tend back to 3 billion people. Now, Holdren is even worse. He's more genocidal than Gianmaria Ortes. He's more genocidal than Malthus, who followed in the footsteps of Ortes. Holdren says that the optimum world population is 1 billion. Now let's pause. At the time Holdren wrote that, the world population was already 4 billion. Today, if you say the optimum population is 1 billion, it would mean that more than 5 billion would have to go. And again, these are orders of magnitude that Hitler, Stalin, and Mao never dreamed of. Only in the mind of fanatics like Holdren do we get genocide of these proportions. Holdren says that the big task of policy, and here the third world and developing countries should take note, he says the main political problem facing the world is not world economic development, but stopping world economic development. He's very worried that countries like China and India and others, Latin America, South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, that they're going to try to imitate the development of the US, Europe, and Japan. And Holdren says that would be catastrophic. What we need is to stop third world development. We've got to convince the third world not to do that, and we've got to institute de-development worldwide. In other words, turn back the clock of history, roll back progress, and go back to what amounts to pre-industrial civilization. Well, pre-industrial civilization is a lifespan of 30 to 35 years, nasty, brutish, and short, as Hobbes put it. So that's what Holdren wants for you and your family. In order to enforce this, he talks about a supranational monstrosity that he calls a planetary regime. This means a world empire, a supranational, one-world government that would attempt to control all details of human life. Would start with what he calls the global commons. That is to say, anything that impacts the air, the soil, and the oceans would become the subject of international, supranational intervention. It would be like the IMF on steroids. Instead of just economic life, it would extend to everything. Again, the temperature in your living room, the kind of car you have, the amount you get to eat, whether you have a pet. I mean, minimal details about your everyday life. For individual countries such as the US, Holdren recommends a population law which would fix the outer limits of the acceptable population. And again, what happens if you are surplus? What happens if you are declared a useful leader? He doesn't say that so explicitly, but it's clear that you wouldn't fare very well. So one of the features of a population law, in Holdren's point of view, is to regulate the size of the family. And this is what, of course, China did in the post-Mao period, the two-child per family policy. So the hand of the totalitarian state intervenes in the most intimate decisions of the family, and the realm of individual responsibility pretty much ceases to exist. Now, Holdren is willing to do just about anything to, first of all, slow the rate of population increase. That's his first goal. Secondly, to bring population into stasis or equilibrium, zero growth, but then to turn it back and have a decreasing, diminishing world population. The Chinese experience is if you do that, you're flirting with economic collapse. But Holdren doesn't care about that. He's, of course, a fanatic. So what is he willing to do? He talks about all kinds of forced sterilization, that you can have surgical interventions on males. In India, he says, there was a policy of obligatory vasectomy once you had 2 children in the family if you were a government employee. He says that's something we could think about imitating. Compulsory abortion. Think about that. That would be something that was flirted with in post-Maoist China. He wants to have licenses for birth. In other words, a woman is not allowed to give birth unless she's purchased a marketable birth license. And of course, what happens if Goldman Sachs comes in and, because women are going to want those, drives up the price 100 times so that nobody can afford a birth permit? And what happens to people that are born illegitimately, meaning without a birth permit? He wants to have things that have been done in the meantime. Norplant, I think, is an example. Subcutaneous chemical devices that are put into the flesh of women to prevent them from conceiving. So, forced sterilization, compulsory abortion, forced vasectomy, birth licenses, subcutaneous implants, all kinds of compulsory, obligatory methods. In terms of forced sterilizations, he says you could do this by putting chemicals in food and water, but he thinks that these other methods would be more effective. He also has other methods of persuasion, which are really coercion, that if you have more than 2 kids in the family, there's no more free public education for you. The 3rd kid has to pay to go to the public school. If you're living in public housing, which is the case in some countries, the 3rd kid gets you kicked out of the public housing and you become homeless. He's also in favor of violating the family by seizing babies. He says that if it's a teenager or a minor who has had an illegitimate child and there's no husband in the picture, then the government should come in and seize that child and have a policy of forced adoption to take care of that illegitimate child. You can see that Holdren is a collectivist. He is not a collectivist of the Marxist type, however. I would call him a collectivist in the tradition of Rousseau for 2 reasons. Remember, there are 2 Rousseaus. One is the Rousseau who says that the noble savage is the goal of human life. In other words, the more primitive you are, the less civilization you have, the better you are. Just if you think about that, Rousseau on that basis is one of the most influential philosophers of the current time, because it basically says primitive societies are better than corrupt modern society, so we should go back to nature and go back to the ways of these underdeveloped peoples. But then there's the other side of Rousseau, which is the collective will. The late Rousseau writes about the collective will and that the individual counts nothing compared to the collective will. This is essentially the philosophy of the reign of terror in the French Revolution, and that's pretty much where Holdren is. So I would call him a Rousseauvian fanatic in addition to being a Malthusian and a Darwinist and a Benthamite, and he wants to have the noble savage, roll back civilization, go back to pre-industrial civilization, or call it civilization if you want to, and at the same time he wants to impose the collective will. He even writes about infanticide. He says that infanticide is found in many primitive peoples, and he says, well, what that means is that these societies thought that the survival of the group and the collectivity was more important than the individual, so they didn't hesitate to kill babies, which implies Holdren's idea of civilization. It's a form of barbarity. Again, in Holdren's world, there are two main evils. One is overpopulation, the other is industrial pollution. In the world we live in, the main problem is poverty, ignorance, disease, backwardness, illiteracy, and the rest. The main problem of today's world is a massive underproduction of most of the worldly goods that humans need: food, clothing, shelter, transportation, jobs, housing, healthcare, all the rest. All of that is lacking. 1 billion people in the world we live in are on the verge of starvation because of the world food market situation and the fact that we have almost no food stocks left anywhere in the world. You've also got about 2 to 3 billion people right now who are living under €1 per day, under about $1.50 or $2. So Holdren looks at that world and says the reason for poverty is overpopulation. I would say no. The reason for poverty is underproduction of all the main things. Question for Holdren: if you have a bunch of people and you want to give them all a hat, and there are not enough hats to go around, what do? I say, manufacture more hats. Holdren says, start cutting off heads. That's Holdren. In being a follower of Bentham and Malthus and Darwin, in this administration of fanatics, Holdren is joined by others. Let's look at Cass Sunstein, who is the regulations czar. Sunstein is the pioneer of what is called behaviorist economics. He wants to nudge you or convince you to do certain things. The problem is the nudge is not a friendly nudge. The nudge is going to become a cattle prod, and then it's become a bayonet, and then it's become a machine gun, and God knows what else. That's Cass Sunstein. He's a former law professor from the University of Chicago. Now, he quotes Bentham all the time. Sunstein is a guy who says that animals should have legal rights, including the right to be represented by lawyers in a court. Now, Sunstein, by most people's standards, would be quite extreme. But in the Obama administration, Sunstein is a moderate. Sunstein wants to give legal rights to animals. Holdren wants to give legal rights to trees so that they could be represented by lawyers and they could block development projects because you need more trees. Well, again, I'm all for trees. You want more trees, plant them. During the New Deal, we had something called the Shelter Belt that planted a couple of 100 million trees across the midsection of the United States as an attempt to make the climate better. It was an attempt to deal with the Oklahoma Dust Bowl of the 1930s. The way you do that is to plant trees. Trees are fine, but again, with Holdren, we're going to have trees represented by lawyers stopping human needs from being realized. Generally speaking, the Malthusian, zero-growth, radical environmentalist, ecological extremist movement of the late 60s and early 70s is the precursor that prepares the ground for the radical deindustrialization of the United States in the late 70s and then into the 80s, the so-called Great U-turn, where the U.S. goes from being an industrial power to being a post-industrial rubble heap. Key moment is 1968 with the foundation of the Club of Rome, Aurelio Pache and Alexander King. Alexander King once admitted that the whole purpose of the ecological movement was to stop the economic development of the third world and make sure that there would be fewer brown and black people in the world, because this was a problem for the Anglo-Saxon master race, the way he looked at it. 1972, you've got this tremendous work of charlatans and crackpots, Meadows and Forrester, The Limits to Growth, which was that the world really should have ended already because the raw materials are being exhausted at such a rapid rate. So out of that, you get the green movement, the greening of America, and the coming of something that you didn't have before, was a mass constituency for radical environmentalists. In particular, Malthus used to be a dirty word among leftists because he was considered a British imperialist. Marx and Engels had to attack Malthus because otherwise they couldn't function in progressive circles. But by the 1970s, thanks to this, Malthus and Darwin become good guys when, of course, they're really very bad and both charlatans and crackpots. So that's sort of the preparation. You've also got people saying that a service economy is better, the so-called Triple Revolution Committee. You've got the government of Edward Heath in Britain and Harold Wilson of the Labour Party saying quality of life is more important than production. All of these are ways to begin arguing the idea of deindustrialization. The way you get it, though, big time in the U.S. is Paul Adolph Volcker of the Trilateral Commission, appointed by Jimmy Carter of the Trilateral Commission. And what Volcker then does is he gets the Federal Reserve and he raises interest rates to unprecedented levels, a 22% prime rate, meaning that for most people, the interest rates were 30% or even more. And that's for mortgages, for various kinds of business financing and so forth. What Volcker was able to do was to essentially destroy the industrial base of the United States. It became impossible to produce with credit costing that much. Some people compared this to Keynes, right? Keynes said, well, let's have inflation as a cure for depression. And Volcker came back with, no, let's have depression as a cure for inflation. And that's pretty much what he did. He pitched the United States into an industrial depression, which has never ended, wiped out large parts of basic industry, steel mills, chemical, rubber, and all the rest. This is where the jobs went. If you remember Obama's bitter Klinger quote, he says, 30 years ago, the jobs went away, and now we have these bitter people clinging to God and guns and anti-trade. Well, how did those jobs go away? That was Volcker. The industrial base of the U.S. was gutted and destroyed by Volcker, and with the environmentalists there, this could be greeted as something good. The resistance to this in the Democratic Party was paralyzed because, well, it's a good thing after all. We won't have any more smokestacks. Well, instead of smokestacks, you're going to have a declining standard of living, and this is what goes together with it. Since about 1967, the U.S. standard of living has declined by 2/3, and that includes average hourly earnings. It includes the fact that the usual measures of inflation don't tell you how much inflation has been. It's much more because you have to include medical care, insurance, and other things that are not really reflected in the market basket. You're working about 6 weeks more per year. So you've got a longer work day, a longer work week, and a longer work year. Vacations shrink, and the work year is extended by about 6 weeks altogether. The other thing that you've got is your commute is much further, and you're sitting in traffic for a total of about 2 to 3 weeks just sitting there, in addition to whatever the length of your commute would be. If you add all of that together in terms of the burden of economic life on the average standard of living and quality of life, you will find that the U.S. standard of living has indeed declined by 2/3. You can look on shadow government statistics. Their index confirms my finding. It goes from about 300 in the late 60s, early 70s to about 100 today, meaning you've lost 2/3 of your standard of living. So deindustrialization leads to immiseration. It means that the middle class standard of living is destroyed. You've also got more people working. It's not enough for the husband to work. The wife has to work. The kids have to work. The husband has to work 2 jobs. The wife 2 jobs, and all this that everybody knows about. So that is what deindustrialization has done. And that would have been difficult to do without the ideological preparation of green fanatics like Holdren, Ehrlich, Paddock, Meadows and Forrester, the Club of Rome, and collected charlatans and extremists of the 1960s into the 1970s. The disease that we're talking about is not limited to the U.S. Actually, it really originates in Great Britain with these people like Bentham and Malthus and Darwin. One of Gordon Brown's aides was recently so indiscreet as to say that they were talking about cutting the population of the British Isles by 30 million people. Now, that's way more than Hitler could have accomplished. And what it shows, again, is the anti-human fanaticism, the genocidal fury of the Anglo-American ruling elite, that they hate people and they're determined to exterminate people, and that's what they're into. And if you want to live with a ruling class like that, it's going to be nasty, brutish, and short. The origins of eugenics, racist thinking, race science in the U.S. go back in particular to the Harriman family. Averell Harriman was the son of Harriman, the railroad builder, who had been attacked publicly by Theodore Roosevelt as a robber baron, as a public menace. So Harriman, as a parvenu, new money, who had to go to Oxford and talk to old money, he had a tremendous identity crisis and sense of personal insecurity. So what he wanted to do was to create himself a wonderful race pedigree, that he too was part of the Anglo-Saxon master race. So his wife contributed to this famous gathering at the American Museum of Natural History, which was attended by Nazis as well as British and other race scientists, meaning charlatans and proto-genocidalists, who came together with the idea of improving the race. So U.S. states got into the business of sterilizing people, denying marriage licenses. You have these stories, the Kallikaks and the Jukes in New York State and similar things. The Nazis actually said, the U.S. has beaten us to the punch in terms of eugenics measures. So in some ways, they were actually following in the footsteps of what Harriman and this faction had done in the United States. Now, Bush the Elder, in his first congressional term, when he was representing River Oaks, Houston, Texas, elected in 1966, it was a district that had to be tailor-made, designed for him, as part of a redistricting, so he could finally get elected after he failed to get into the Senate from Texas against Yarborough in 1964. Bush became the champion of eugenics. He brought in Shockley, Herenstein, and these other fanatics, right? The sort of bell curve school, the precursors of that. In other words, people who talk about racial inferiority of the non-white races and things of this sort. These people were outside the boundaries of respectability because of the backlash against the Nazis. But Bush the Elder did everything he could to make them respectable. He brought them to Congress. He let them lecture groups of members of the House and so forth. So much so that Wilbur Mills, the head of one of the key House committees at the time, coined the term "Rubber's Bush." That George Bush the Elder was so interested in contraception for the lower orders that he was Rubber's Bush. Now, the idea that I think with Bush the Elder was he believes in the Anglo-Saxon master race. The problem is if you believe in that, you got a problem of numbers because there are so many other people who are not part of this. So what are you going to do? You've got to do something to limit the population growth and probably turn it around among the non-white populations in particular. So I think that is the one thing that Bush the Elder actually believes in as a fixed point of ideology. John P. Holdren, the current Obama population czar, John P. Holdren, the White House science czar, is very much in the tradition of this Harriman eugenics movement, which was rubbing elbows with the Nazis in the 20s and 30s. Things like compulsory abortion, compulsory sterilization, taking children away from parents, preventing marriages, marriage licenses that you have to pay for, implants and other things to prevent birth. This is all in the Nazi or quasi-Nazi tradition of the 20s and 30s. The mentality of oligarchy does not change. We have to remember that as long as there are human individuals, you're going to have the one, the few, and the many. There's going to be one person, small groups of people, and large masses. So this is always going to be with you. These are ontological categories of human existence. The problem you have is if you have the dictatorship of the one, that's a fairly clear-cut problem. If you have the spontaneous mob of the many, that's a problem that people can also recognize. But what you tend to have in human civilization is the rule of the few, the oligarchy, the iron law of oligarchy, studied by German sociologists in the late 1900s. Now, the purpose of an oligarchy is really only one thing. A tyrant can have a project. A mob can have a goal. But an oligarchy is there to do one thing, to perpetuate oligarchy, to give it more and more power and allow it to exist. The mentality of oligarchy always depends on the idea that there's an elite and a mass, and there can't be anything in between. There's really no room for a middle class in oligarchy. So the elite has to justify itself based on what? Why should they rule? Are they smarter? Are they more efficient? Are they better? They're probably none of those things. They're probably inferior in many ways. So they've got to find other ways to justify what is an irrational principle of domination. So oligarchs generally find ways to argue that the mass of people are inferior, that their lives are not worth living, and indeed that they're closer to animals than they are to the elite. So whenever you have an oligarchical elite, they're always going to try to portray the masses as ignorant beasts, inferior, or whatever else it is. And that's what we see. This is very strong in the Anglo-American world. The US-British tradition is not that of a dictator. Stalin, Hitler, this you generally don't find. It's also not so much in the notion of mob rule and demagogy of that sort, although occasionally it is. Generally what you have in terms of real power is an oligarchy. So this oligarchy is inherited from Venice, from the Venetian Republic of the Middle Ages, and it's transferred into Britain between 1500 and 1600 or so in the form of the Whig Party, the top aristocratic party, which rules Britain from the early 1600s really until about 1832 and the Reform Bill. So it's an oligarchical system. The US and the British are a polycentric oligarchy where you can't say the Bilderberger runs it, or the Trilateral, or the CFR, or Bohemian Grove, or whatever it is. All of those are power centers that jostle each other and coexist. But what they amount to is an oligarchy. If you have a tyrant, you can convince the tyrant to change policy. It can be done. But to change an oligarchy, as Plato points out, is harder because you've got to convince so many different ones, and as soon as you convince some of them, you've deconvinced others because those are the enemies and they hate the ones that you've convinced. So that's the problem that we face in the Anglo-American world. The Club of Rome is a group of old fascists, for want of a better word. Aurelio Peccei was the most prominent guy. He had been a fascist for Mussolini in the Balkans during World War II, done all manner of crimes there. And then we have his associate, Alexander King, who admitted that embarrassing thing, that the purpose of this was to express the genocide of the Third World. In other words, that it was designed to make sure that there would be no Third World development, that therefore the black and brown people of the world would not become numerous. So the Club of Rome is already the beginning of a genocidal mentality in which Holdren and Cass Sunstein and other people in the Obama regime participate. Naturally, as this becomes more extreme, as the breakdown crisis gets worse, and it is getting worse, as the depression deepens, you get into the definitions of useless eaters, lives not worthy of being lived, non-productive culls, they're called sometimes, surplus population, as Scrooge said, following Bentham and Malthus. And how many are there of such people? As the depression gets worse, it gets to be more and more of the population that are useless eaters and non-productive culls. So the problem that we face is the ideology has deteriorated. The global warming ideology is, at least up to now, the most extreme form, because it says that carbon dioxide is a pollutant and that carbon is bad when we ourselves are a carbon-based form of life. So it seems to say that the inevitable results of humanity is pollution, that people pollute, or indeed that people are pollution. It gets back to Ehrlich and Holdren and their idea that humanity is a cancer on the face of the earth. So the ultimate logic of all this is extermination, genocide, the concentration camp, depopulation, and a horror that goes beyond anything seen in the 20th century. That's where Obama is essentially leading. When Holdren is confronted with his published works, the body of work on which his scientific credentials rest, he wants to run away from them and say that he's no longer the environmental extremist that he once was, that his genocidal fury has mellowed with age. But I wouldn't believe that for a minute. It's just that he's become a little bit more sophisticated politically, and he's seen how damaging it is when people throw that stuff at you. It's, of course, a monstrosity that he was allowed to get through that confirmation process in the first place. In terms of genocide, genocide entered the U.S. policy realm in an overt way with this National Security Memorandum 200 by Kissinger in the 1974-75 period, which said that if you have population growth in third world countries, they will compete for the limited natural resources that the U.S. intends to monopolize. I attended the food conference, the World Food Conference of the Food and Agricultural Organization in Rome in December of 1974, which was attended by Kissinger. And I put out some leaflets at this FAO conference in Rome in late 1974. And in response to that, the UN bureaucracy kicked me out of the conference, not for disrupting anything, but simply by pointing out the obvious implications of what was going on. At that same conference, the Soviet delegate made a useful contribution. He said that if you just took the existing off-the-shelf technology and made that available to everybody, you would have no problem with 35 billion people on the earth. The demographic potential is still very, very large, lots and lots of wide open spaces, but they kicked me out. So the Kissinger line was, stop population growth in third world countries, because otherwise they'll compete for natural resources. I guess he's looking into what happens today with Chinese oil consumption and the Chinese in Africa offering their own bids for mining and other products. The other thing to stress is under Carter, and in particular under Secretary of State Edmund Muskie, you had Global 2000 and Global Futures. And that is the real watershed of making genocide, population reduction, euthanasia, population control into the dominant ideology of the U.S. government, the foreign policy establishment, and the State Department. Global 2000 and Global Futures enacted under Muskie are really the turning point, after which U.S. policy in the developing sector is no longer development, but it's rather population control, population reduction with strong genocidal overtones. Holdren writes books about nuclear target selection, nuclear war. He's a strangelove. He's a strangelove under green left cover. However, he recognizes what strangeloves often forget. You can kill more people with economic means than you can with military means. Robert McNamara did his best to escalate Vietnam. Robert McNamara killed more people at the World Bank than he ever did at the Pentagon. The general estimate is, well, 40,000 people a day, meaning 15, 20 million a year minimum, die as a result of the IMF conditionalities. They die of starvation, malnutrition, and diseases like diarrhea that can be cured for a few pennies. So that's the cost of the IMF-based system is already in the neighborhood of 20 million dead per year. And again, 40,000 per day. And that's an old figure. Now that we have the Depression, it's probably more like 50,000 a day or more, because the effect of the Depression is obviously to increase that figure. This is a book called Ecoscience, Population, Resources, Environment. The authors, Paul R. Ehrlich of Stanford University. This is the charlatan with the population bomb. Ann H. Ehrlich, who is an environmental fanatic in her own right. And John P. Holdren of the University of California, Berkeley, today White House Science Czar for Obama, published by the W.H. Freeman and Company Publishing House in San Francisco. And the edition I have here is 1977, so we're in the Jimmy Carter era. First edition, 1970, second edition, 1972. And as you can see, this is a hefty tome. This is the best part of 1,000 pages, more than 1,000 pages. If you count the index, we get up to 1,500 pages of raving, insane, Malthusian drivel. And he tells you he's a Malthusian, a neo-Malthusian. He loves Darwin. He loves the struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest. And in some ways, he wants to bring that into human society. Now, the heart of the book, I think, for political purposes, has to do with the measures that Holdren proposes to implement as a means of slowing, stopping, and reversing population growth. The heart of the book, I think, starts on page 783, Population Control Direct Measures. You've got to convince people of the necessity of reducing population. For example, one thing he quotes approvingly, a case in point was the sudden imposition in 1976 of compulsory sterilization in some states in India and for government employees in Delhi, following 2 decades of discouraging results from voluntary family planning. So let's make it involuntary, compulsory, obligatory, and we're going to come in with compulsory sterilization. Let's jump ahead to the involuntary controls. In the 1960s, it was proposed to vasectomize all fathers of 3 or more children in India. India entertained the policy of compulsory sterilization, and if they had really done it, then they would have been better off, as Holdren says. A program of sterilizing women after their 2nd or 3rd child, despite the fact that this is harder to do than a vasectomy, might be easier to implement than sterilizing men. Other than that, Holdren is interested, and again on page 787, the development of a long-term sterilizing capsule that could be implanted under the skin and removed when pregnancy is desired. Well, this is Norplant, and that's been implanted in victim populations in U.S. inner cities now for a couple of decades. One of the problems is, how do you get it out? The government puts it in, but who's going to help you to take it out? That's a little bit harder. Another proposal that Holdren is interested in, he quotes the economist Kevin Boulding, British, I'm pretty sure. Boulding proposed to issue to each woman at maturity a marketable license that would entitle her to have a fixed number of children. And of course, again, if Goldman Sachs gets into the market, then that could be priced out of reach of poor people. He quotes social scientists who have looked into the effects of a marketable license for birth. A very interesting chart on page 788. Baby licenses. We're told that you can have a monthly subsidy if you have no more than 2 children. You can have a monthly tax on people with more than 2 children to discourage that. A one-time lump sum tax on excess babies over 2. So if you're over 2 children, that's excess. And quotas for families. So again, the basic idea is some measures designed to persuade, and then the hardcore, hardline measures, compulsory sterilization, compulsory abortion, and it's also a good idea to take children away from mothers if they're teenagers, unmarried, and otherwise not suitable. Now, he wants to impose this not just domestically in the U.S., but even more. He wants to have family planning measures. Here on page 789, he wants to have family planning measures in the less developed countries. High priority should be given to stimulating attitude changes and counteracting the effects of pronatalist traditions. You may remember President de Gaulle of France talked about 100 million Frenchmen as a national goal. Obviously, for Holdren, this is impossible. What are the problems with this? Well, one problem is human rights, page 793. Some people have this idea that there's a fundamental human right for each person responsibly to determine the size of his or her own family. Holdren doesn't like that one. Could this be done in the U.S.? Well, we have the Constitution. Holdren laments, and now we're on page 837. To date, there has been no serious attempt in Western countries, Europe, U.S., Japan, to use laws to control excessive population growth, although there exists ample authority under which population growth could be regulated. For example, under the U.S. Constitution, effective population control programs could be enacted under the clauses that empower Congress to appropriate funds to provide for the general welfare and to regulate commerce. So the Commerce Clause becomes abortion and sterilization. Or for the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So the idea is strip everybody of the right to exist under the 14th Amendment. Such laws constitutionally could be very broad. Indeed, it has even been concluded that compulsory population control laws, even including laws requiring compulsory abortion, could be sustained under the existing Constitution if the population crisis became sufficiently severe to endanger the society. Few today consider the situation in the United States serious enough to justify compulsion, however, laments Holdren. The most compelling arguments that might be used to justify government regulation of reproduction are based on the rapid population growth relative to the capacity of environmental and social systems to absorb the associated impact. The appeal to greed. To provide a high quality of life for all, there must be fewer people, says Holdren. But there are other sound reasons that support the use of law to regulate reproduction. In today's world, Holdren writes on page 838, the number of children in a family is a matter of profound public concern. There is no individual sphere anymore for a Malthusian fanatic. On page 850, Holdren wants to convert to a spaceman economy. This is not the moonshot anymore. This is the idea that you're on spaceship Earth and everything you have with you is a limited resource. So what you've got to do is reduce throughput of raw materials in industrial processes. He quotes a fellow crackpot, Herman Daly, who has suggested a specific mechanism for accomplishing population reduction. Put strict depletion quotas on the natural resources of the United States, meaning that you couldn't use more than 2 or 3% of the existing oil or minerals or whatever it is. The problem with that is, what we've found since the publication of the Limits of Growth is that the available stocks of most raw materials have grown. They haven't gone down, they've gone up because you find more than you use. And that, I think, that would be even more clear if this process were not sabotaged. We would want to impose restrictions on the import of manufactured goods. Well, up to a point, but not for Holdren's goals. And there's a big attack on the cornucopians, again on page 851. The American mentality that you can solve things through science and production is something that Holdren wants to polemicize against. And that gets us then to his favorite theme, page 926, the de-development of overdeveloped countries. We've got to stop the less developed countries from imitating the growth path of the developed world. One key to saving world society lies in a measured and orderly retreat from overdevelopment in today's overdeveloped countries. That would be the U.S. A process we will label, for want of a better word, de-development. So if you thought your living standard was too low, Holdren is here to tell you, your living standard is too high. You should be de-developed. World government, international controls, the global commons. The quote here is, mutual coercion, mutually agreed upon. The New World Order. It has been apparent for some time that the nations of this planet cannot long survive, we read on page 939, cannot long survive without a system of worldwide controls for dealing with the ecosphere, the world economic system, and world economic growth. Such a system must be above all capable of resolving national differences. This is the basic conclusion of the distinguished professor of international law, Richard A. Falk, as he analyzed the situation, exemplified by the projections of alternative future scenarios. We might enter a plea here for surrendering some national sovereignty to a world government, but it's unfortunately clear that there will not be a supranational government in the foreseeable future. But now 30 years have gone by, and maybe this is within reach at the Copenhagen conference in December of 2009. So we get the U.S. environmental program. And again, in the conclusion, the summary of this is there are two factions on Earth. We have the cornucopians. We can call them the growthsmanship group. The moonshot mentality. Those are people who say science, technology, and industry can solve any problem with political will and the proper effort. And that's pretty much how humanity has survived up to now. But that's the wrong path, according to Holdren. We've got to become neo-Malthusians. On these points, says Holdren, we find ourselves firmly in the neo-Malthusian camp. And again, that's based on Bentham, Ortiz, and it's the basis, it's in turn of Darwin. This is a cookbook for the extermination of humanity beyond what he thinks, because the essential predicament of humanity is realize progress or collapse. If you look in historians of world history like Toynbee, he's got a catalog of, 20 different world civilizations, and they've all collapsed except one. And generally they've collapsed from within, and they've collapsed to a very significant degree because of thinking like this, that there's a limit to growth and that the privileges of an oligarchy are more important than the standard of living and the success of the individual human family. So this is a cookbook for the extermination of humankind, right? Those series that you see on the History Channel. What if there were no people? Well, Holdren has been blazing that trail for quite a while. This is an ultra-Hitlerian genocidalist who's today operating out of the White House in Washington, D.C., and it's time to kick him out. Maurice Strong of Canada is a British imperialist functionary, close to Holdren in his outlook. In the build-up to the 1992 United Nations Conference in Rio, Maurice Strong wrote that the choice is between collapsing the entire industrial system of the world and the survival of humanity and the planet. And he's in favor of collapsing the industrial system. So he put out a demagogic call to people that the task of the rest of us is to collapse the industrial system of the world. I suppose George Soros and the people at AIG and Goldman Sachs in the derivatives department were reading all that, because they've certainly taken us pretty far down the road to that. If you collapse the industrial system of the world, the problem you find is that the relative potential population density of the world goes below the existing 7 billion plus people that we've got, and that overhang gets into the danger of extinction. So that's a call to genocide, again, on an ultra-Hitlerian scale, issued by Maurice Strong back in 1992. Holdren is very much in that tradition. Ehrlich and Holdren and their ilk are crackpots, charlatans, and quackademics, in the sense that their method is fundamentally wrong. The predicament of humanity is that at any given moment in time, with the existing technology that you have, you face a finite world of natural resources, except that what you can use as a natural resource is already defined by the technology you have. So if you expand your technological repertoire and armory through scientific discovery and technological development, you can define increasing areas of the natural world as usable natural resources. And that's what we've done up to now. If wood is not enough, get coal. If coal is not convenient, get oil. If oil is not enough, get nuclear. If nuclear has problems, get thermonuclear. Look at antimatter. Look beyond, and still beyond a horizon that we can't even see at this point. The essential human condition is realize progress or collapse. Advance in science, technology, and industry, or you will soon cease to exist. And that's the fundamental human premise that this lunatic, Malthusian, Darwinian, Benthamite school, Ehrlich, Holdren, and the rest of them, deny.
The president, I think, has surrounded himself with some of the most brilliant choices. Dr. Holdren, I don't want to embarrass you, but I sometimes refer to you as walking on water.
Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds? Go to Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv for the latest headlines and cutting-edge information.
Mr. Alex Jones. You know, I'm not even really here to speak to you guys. Almost all of you, I'm sure, probably know more about this than I do. We read about the worldwide convictions of UN so-called peacekeeping forces cutting the heads off little children. We see the butchery, the manipulation of the world economy. We see the IMF go into Russia and South Korea and tell them to quadruple their taxes because that's a free market reform. We see our local police coming more and more under federal control. We see the so-called anti-terrorism training going on in all the cities, the police girding themselves in black with ski masks. You know what I have to say to you. Get ready, because this is history. It repeats itself. Look at this century alone. Now, speaking to the law enforcement officers here, see, I have nothing to hide. I'm not a criminal. And I want them to know that. I want them to start going out and getting the child molesters and the murderers that we see in the back of the newspaper every week who are released to kill and kill and kill. They just found Colleen Reed's body a couple of weeks ago. But they'll put you in jail. And I don't even smoke marijuana, but they'll put you in jail for just a little bitty bag of marijuana, but let out some murderer. Now give me a break. They want to pack the prisons with nonviolent people, and then they turn loose just incredible hordes of criminals to run wild, and that is the Hegelian principle. You create a crisis, you create fear, you offer a solution. Now the reason I've been on my crusade for 4 years now is because I hate bullies, and I hate people that are dumbing down our civilization. And that's the facts. Look at the test scores. I hate the IRS. To these law enforcement officers here, they can't go out and arrest somebody, at least not yet, and I know they don't want to, unless they have probable cause. And then they can't convict them unless they've been proven guilty. You see, in America, it's different from Germany and Russia and China, with all the dictators they've had. The difference is you're innocent until proven guilty. But with the IRS, you're not innocent until proven guilty. And some of these police officers have skulls that are so thick, they take these criminal orders, they put in the Bell Lab thumb scanners and scan us like cattle. And they're so thick-skulled, they don't see the commercials on TV by Lockheed and by Visa talking about doing it to buy and sell and to cash checks. Wake up! These cameras aren't for the criminals on the street corners. These thumb scanners aren't for the criminals or the so-called illegal aliens. It's all to control us, the slaves, the serfs, the feudal system. The average American pays 62% in some form of tax. Serfs in ancient Europe only paid 20%. And you know, the government likes to say, and city planners like to say, that big government gave us these structures. No, it was the men and women that laid the mortar. It was the people that laid the asphalt. It's the people that work in the plants, the automobile plants, the power plants, which is all being shipped overseas. They're shutting down this nation. And they can make their jokes. I challenge these law enforcement officers to go to Walmart or any other store. 95% of the items are from out of this nation, from India, from China, from you name it. And that's a fact. That's a concrete fact. What are we supposed to fight the next war with? Wendy's hamburgers? We gonna throw hamburgers at them? And you gotta ask yourself, why is this happening to our country? Because we're America. We stood up to Adolf Hitler. We stood up to Stalin. We stood up to the British Empire and kicked their butt back in 1776. And we're going to do it again, George Bush and Bill Clinton. You're nothing but British agents. Let's take Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It's in the history books that his family was the heroin runners for the British East India Company. Yeah, heroin used to be legal. DPS, get your history. You men are just like the stormtroopers back in Germany in 1933. Most of them were decent people. But as it got bigger and bigger, and as the power surged, and as the propaganda poured, by 1940, they were killing millions of people. Look at every other nation. From Africa to Central and South America, to China, to Cambodia, to Vietnam, to Eastern Europe. Death, death, death. You fools. You're all going to pay in America. Don't we? Don't you really down. Give me that bull. And I'm saying to people, the death threats to my person and my family and my friends and the harassment, which we documented now by the Tower Records down at the Mueller Airport, I don't care. You see, the people that harass us, they're cowards. They think it's going to bother us. It's not. It's only going to reaffirm our spirit of freedom to stand up for our nation. It's incrementalism. They got the power. They just want more power. And make no mistake, they're enforcers, the law enforcement community, many of which are waking up, who are good people. We've got police officers here in the crowd. I have CIA agents on my radio program, FBI. What about Frederick Whitehurst, DPS, former head of the FBI crime lab? Came out and said the FBI manufactures evidence in every major case. When they go out and destroy the Murrow Federal Building, of course they got to manufacture some evidence. When they, it's not just me, it's the October 28th, 1993 New York Times. Sheikh Abdel Rahman, they gave those guys the bomb, helped them cook it, trained the driver. Why would they do this? Well, why would Hitler burn the Reichstag? To create fear, to create a crisis. Now I see the police talking to themselves. They're probably talking about their wife back home and their kids, trying not to face the facts because they're cowards. The real men and women stood up a long time ago, and I count myself proud to be here with you today. Yes, long live the Constitution, God bless America, and death to the New World Order. We shall, we must, and we will prevail because we're willing to stand up against what's happening.
Well, first of all, Freedom to Fascism is a movie that everybody should see because we show the fraud of the income tax. We show how judges put people in jail for no reason. We show the corruption of the justice system, and we show how the Federal Reserve came into being and how it's controlling society, and how all the central banks of the world are working together through the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, which is the central bank for all the central banks, and how they all work together to create this one world government, the one world order, which is what they're trying to do. So Freedom to Fascism is a movie just to get you a good basic education about how the world is really working. And I really want everybody to see that movie, critical. In terms of the CFR, in terms of compartmentalization, I mean, there are many good people, I believe, that are part of these organizations who don't even understand what the organization's really about. People like when I was in Germany doing cancer treatment, there was a gentleman there who was visiting a friend of his who had cancer, and he was a member of the CFR, and we were talking, and I showed him the movie. He said, "Oh my God, I'm going to resign. I had no idea this was what the CFR was about." He had no idea. He was just a nice guy who thought he was in this prestigious organization.
Yeah, a lot of it's about getting good people, and so you can watch them. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer.
Well, no, it wasn't even that. It was, well, a lot of people join the CFR because they think it's a prestigious organization. It'll help them in business, make good business contacts. They didn't have an understanding that the CFR is really about world domination. about you know, how they and the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, all work together, you know, with the banks to control the people. They don't. A lot of them don't understand that. They don't see the big picture. Oh, it's CFR. It's a prestigious organization. I'll meet this one. I'll meet that one. I can do good business deals out of it. It's just business to them. The CFR wants to get the people in there that have influence and power, you know, and so they're part of that. So they're not opposing them, you know. It's like the whole country today is becoming the haves and have-nots. You're getting the very, very wealthy, the middle class is being destroyed, and you're getting the poor people.
Isn't this just a slick mafia that took over and uses fancy PR?
Well, you can call it mafia, you call it whatever you want, but it's definitely a criminal organization. There's no question about it. But it's a criminal organization that has prestige, you know, that appears to have what's the word I'm looking for? Class, style. You know, it's like, you know, respected. It's respected. People don't look at it as being a criminal organization. That's what a great job they've done. You know, people look at Alan Greenspan as being a hero. You know, the maestro. You know.
What do you think happened with him in the late '60s? He wrote a big section, a chapter for Ayn Rand in a book, and he talked about how horrible the Federal Reserve was. We needed a gold standard. Now the bankers are robbing us. And then they literally came and said, "Oh, and you see somebody who made a deal with Beelzebub."
Well, you know, exactly. You make a deal with the devil. I mean, it gave him a chance to be one of the most powerful men on the earth, you know, and it gave him a chance to accomplish things he never thought he would accomplish in his life other than that. And it's very seductive. You know, it's a very attractive perfume. I mean, I was attracted when they came to me and spoke to me about it. I thought about it. I was attracted to it, you know. They asked me if I wanted to open up these nightclubs, you know, open up a chain of Baywatch nightclubs, you know, and we'll do this thing, we'll do that, and we can do this. I mean, all these things were proposed to me, business ventures. But you know
what it is? It was your nature, though. It's the way you are. You couldn't take the deal.
Well, I can't do that to people. I just can't be in a position where I can do that to other people. I have a conscience, and my conscience would not permit me to do that. You know, people say I'm very courageous. I don't think I'm courageous. I think I have a conscience, and my conscience doesn't allow me to do that to people. It makes me feel sick. You know, I just don't believe in it.
No, I agree. When I do bad things, I feel bad. When I do good things, I feel good.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. And I mean, I don't know what's going to come out.
I mean, I don't have that much money, but I've got some money. I mean, it's like, what more do I need? I can go on a trip if I want. I can help pay for my kids to go to school and have my wife, you know, comfortable. I mean, how do I go out and screw people so I can have some more junk?
Well, you know, money's a funny thing. You know, I was talking to Michael Eisner one day, and I said to Michael, you know, you may have $1 billion, Michael, but they're all dollars. You know, if the dollar goes bad, how much money are you going to have? You know, and that's the thing. You know, everything is denominated in dollars. Everybody thinks in terms of dollars, but the dollar has no value. And then someday it's you know, everything returns to the mean.
Well, really, the whole universe, financial universe we live in, is a matrix fraud.
Yes, it is. And that's why it's going to come crashing at some point. And they're going to try and hold it up as long as they can. I mean, whenever they want to manipulate the markets, they can. If they want to send the price to go down lower, they can. If they want to send the stock market up, they can. They do that. There's no more free markets. You don't live in a society where free markets rule anymore. You don't live in a capitalistic society. You know.
But meanwhile, they say it's capitalistic
right.
and free market all day, when really they're waging war financially and politically.
Exactly right.
Aaron Russo, I want to thank you for this interview. Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm happy to do it for you.
How about your website?
My website, freedomtofascism.com. Go over there, take a look at it. You know, but just folks, you know, all I can say is, you know, take our country back, restore the Constitution. Don't let these bankers do this to us anymore. Stand up. Don't be afraid of them, and do what you got to do. You know, and I have plans in the works, and when I get over my problems, you know, we'll reveal them, you know. And
well, I'll be supportive of that.
Thank you, Alex. And listen, you've done a great job alerting people to the truth. And in other words, don't be afraid to be ridiculed by these people. You know, if 9/11 was a phony, and I know it was, then stand up and say it's a phony. Don't be scared to tell the truth. Don't allow their, you know, their powers of trying to make you look silly to frighten you.
What do you think of what Charlie Sheen did?
I love what Charlie Sheen did. I was so respectful of what he did. I just applauded him.
People saw right through that attack. They flipped a light switch when they went after him.
Yeah, but you see, they don't. You see, the thing is that more people don't come out and do it. You know, to build that wave. Charlie did it. I'm really proud of the guy.
David Lynch did. But the media was smart and didn't bite this time.
Right. I mean, a few people have, but they're not picking up on it because they control the media.
James Brolin did on The View.
I heard that. I heard that as well. But again, they're not picking
Barbara
up.
Walters looked like she was about to have a heart attack.
But they're not. But they don't pick up on it. You see, they don't allow it to go anywhere. You know, it comes if someone says something, they let it die. You know, but they keep perpetuating. You know, the war on terrorism. They keep perpetuating all these things that are lies. And because we've given the Federal Reserve the money-making power, they control the media, they control the government, and they're all in bed together. So you're fighting all this propaganda all the time, and it's a very difficult fight. Americans, mobilize. Stand together, stand tall. Tell the government you're mad as hell. No longer cooperate with the government. Do not accept the national ID card. Do everything in your power to restore freedom and your individuality back to America. Stop being a country run by the institutions for the institutions. Let's go back to we the people, by the people, for the people, as opposed to we the institution, by the institution, for the institution. Stand up for your individual rights. Stand up for the godliness that's in each and every one of us.
Thank you for watching this historic interview with Aaron Russo. Please don't just stand down after watching this film. Research the private Federal Reserve for yourself. Realize it is the main head on the Hydra that we have to go after. Realize that we can fight the political parties all day, but until we go after the heart, the root of the problem, nothing's going to get better. We have this ruling class of private bankers that issue all this fiat currency, and they have committed unbelievable crimes and have the audacity to claim that they're above the law. Ladies and gentlemen, now more than ever, we don't have a choice. It's us or them. Either the New World Order is removed from power, or the world faces more wars, more tyranny, and a nightmarish police state carried out by these eugenicists. So in the memory of Aaron Russo and every other freedom lover out there in history, and for the future of our children and the species, humanity itself, let's call for grand jury investigations of the private Federal Reserve. Let's arrest the bankers. Let's kick these foreign corporate criminals out of our country and get our constitutional republic back. Let's stop being distracted and diverted by the liberal and conservative puppets they stick up in our faces on television. Let's look past the front men to the actual architects of the New World Order and bring them to justice. There's no way these arrogant bastards can get away with this if we expose them and speak out against them. And more, it's coming out even in the mainstream media that they are a pack of criminals who are above the law and who have hijacked our nation. But they're only above the law in our minds. We have to expose them as the criminals they are and bring them to justice. Look in the mirror. You are the solution. Take action and join the ranks of folks like Aaron Russo, Ron Paul, and so many others. God bless you all, and thank you for watching this presentation. Now spread the word about the true enemy of the people in the Fed, in the New World Order, in the hegemony of private central bankers.
How set up are we to deal with this New World Order?
I think we're going to hear a lot about that today.
Let's take the New World Order. It's an interesting phrase.
I've been thinking a little bit about the structure of the world, right? The New World Order, as everybody says.
The peace could yield to the pernicious New World Order.
The New World Order.
The New World Order.
The New World Order. The New World Order. This New World Order.
Stay fixed on your goal of imposing the New World Order.
We kept talking about a New World Order.
A New World Order. That's what we need now. A new world order with swing.
One war and one victory doth not a new world order make.
Conservatives used to believe in the United States of America rather than the United States of the New World Order.
The ambition to create a new world order.
Whose world order is this?
And of course what he called it was the New World Order.
Respect for a new world order.
We can see a new world coming into view, et cetera, et cetera.
That's the core of the New World Order that we want to try to build.
It's the sole superpower, New World Order.
New World Order.
A new world order.
To a new world order of peace.
Let's say a new world order, for want of a better term.
Entities of the New World Order.
The whole concept of New World Order is something else. It really says that the state is God.
The state will play a bigger role in the economy. New order.
What Wilson wanted was a new world order, not just a new world order.
In order to compete in the New World Order.
Compete in this New World Order.
This is the third leg of the New World Order. We had the World Bank, we had the IMF, and now we had the World Trade Organization.
A rigid New World Order.
This hoped-for New World Order.
Constructing a New World Order.
In the New World Order of the 21st century.
The New World Order we're going to put in place
in this New World Order.
In this New World Order.
The patriots in this country are not going to see their rights diminished in order to create a New World Order.
That President Bush has described as a New World Order, which we all share that same desire.
A new world order is surely in the making here.
Are we ready for the New World Order? It's a timely and often controversial question.
You don't hear a politician speak the way you do in America.
It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
Mr. President, thank you so much, and I hope to have you again, and I hope to see you again.